check that? Because when I walked in, I offered my identification, and she said, we can't take any identification. So I could have said I was somebody else, and I got my voting stuff. So.
And that would be voter fraud, and if you
Exactly, but what I'm saying is, if everyone hasn't been checked, then that could be taking place. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you.
Yes.
Anyone else who wishes to make a comment about allowing non-voters in the room?
Yes, you may. I'll defer to you every time.
Hi, I'm Andrea Papalombaris, the Assistant Town Clerk. I just want to clarify what that lady just said. I told her that we cannot ask for an ID by state law. I did not say we can't see one or look at one, but we cannot ask for one by state law. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. Ms. Saffron.
Joni Saffron, Agawam Village. I have no problem with town employees participating in this forum. I do, or the likes of Bruce Tarr, obviously, would always be welcome. But I am totally against having any group that's lobbying for a particular thing we're voting on tonight that are not residents to be admitted into this room.
Okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to be heard on this matter? If not, I'm going to put this to the vote of the assembly. If you have no objection to allowing non-voters to enter the room and to be seated in a designated area, press the green button on your voting device. Just hold on that a second, but the instructions are, if you have no objections from non-voters entering the room, you press the green button. If you have objections, you press the red button, and we'll be ready for your vote in just a minute, just a second. So we're now ready. Again, the instructions, if you have no objection to allowing non-voters in the room, press the green button on your device. If you object to non-voters being in the room, press the red button on your device, and we'll vote now. Last chance to vote. We'll close the voting and display the results. On a vote of 203 to 161 with 2 abstentions, non-voters are permitted to enter the room, but again, they will be directed to the rear of the auditorium to my right. Thank you. We've already done a test of the electronic voting device. If anyone has any concern about the device, again, I'll continue to remind you about which button to push as we move through. We do have an overflow room, so if this venue fills up, we'll send the non-voters to the overflow room, freeing up space for voters in this room. And if that still doesn't satisfy our need for space, we'll be sending voters to the overflow room. The overflow room has the capability for picking up your vote, but it has limited ability for you to participate in the meeting. If you wish to speak, you need to come to this room, and keep in mind that the electronic link between this venue and that venue is via ICANN, and there's approximately a 10-second delay between what happens in this room and what gets displayed in the other room. So as of right now, the overflow room is not open. We have it set up with microphones, pro and con, pro to my left, con to my right. If you're not sure which one to go to, make a guess and go to it. The center microphone, which is displaying question marks, is reserved for folks who have a question about procedures. They're not, it's not the place to ask a question about a motion or an article. It is a question, it's a venue, it's a place to ask questions about procedure. So you have to ask your questions from one of the either pro or con microphones. Comment about the length of speakers, the length of the amount of time that speakers have. Those who are making the main motion, we've asked them to limit their presentation to 10 minutes. We won't hold them to that extremely firmly, but they'll be getting unfavorable glances and notions from the chair as they approach their 10 minutes. If there is a rebuttal, which I would describe in my determination, think of as being a significant rebuttal and worthy of more than or an equal amount of time, at my discretion, I'll exercise that. All others, as you go to the pro mic or the con mic, will ask you to keep your comments to about 3 minutes. If during the course of the meeting you have a notion that you want to amend a motion or call for some other action, it's best, and we ask this quite sincerely, to put it in writing and deliver it to us so we know exactly what the motion is that you're looking for. There's been good cooperation on the part of some who are looking to do this sort of thing. They've submitted their material to the moderator, and I've gone through that material with them to make sure that it's proper as to form, et cetera, et cetera. The speaking from the stage is reserved to committee members, including the school committee members, if they choose to come to the stage, to any committee who has been significantly involved in the preparation of any article. We have town staff here who will answer questions and will ask them to speak for a minute. I think that's the protocol. And with that, we can, unless there are any questions about the process or procedure, we'll move to Article 1. And if we can display Article 1, and I'll recognize Select Board Member Ellis. We have a dead mic.
I get the place of honor tonight. Good evening. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Linda Allison for the Select Board. I move to amend the FY 2025 municipal budget by raising and appropriating an additional $67,701 to the management transfer account. Okay, the state budget was finalized after the town budget was approved in the spring, and the town will receive an additional $67,701 in local aid for FY 2025. By allocating these funds to the management transfer account, this money will be available to offset unanticipated expenses or shortfalls during this fiscal year. The Select Board unanimously recommends this article.
to it, usually with the guidance of the select board. And at this point, there is $90,000 from the annual town meeting, which is our May town meeting. 20,000 has been used, so we're a third of the year through. So this money will likely flow through the budget. It will end up in free cash. It will be registered with the Department of Revenue in November, and then it will be part of our FY27 budget, likely to be spent on CapEx. So just wanted everyone to know, please support this.
School committee has a vote on this? Yes.
Yep. Diana Freehand, 12 Swellers Lane for the school committee. School committee recommends 6-0. Support.
Is there anyone in the room who wishes to speak to this item? If not, we'll go to a vote. Again, if you are in favor of the motion just made, press the green button. If you are not in favor, press the red button. So in favor, the green; not in favor, red. We can take your votes now. We'll ask the voting to be closed and recorded. In the meantime, Scott, can you help us with the dead mics up here? Article 3. Article 3, which is to the appropriation to Essex Tech. I'm sorry. To amend the school.
Good evening, Sasha Sopik, 89 Pine Swamp Road for the school committee. The school committee voted to support Article 2 unanimously. I move to amend FY25 school budget to raise and appropriate an additional $231,809 to the amount approved by Article 4 at the May 2024 annual town meeting. All right. Thank you. This vote is to accept the Chapter 70 funds from the state of Massachusetts and add them to this year's current school budget. At the time that we set the school budget, this fund, the number was not available to us. It's standard for us to review this at the fall town meeting and add it into our annual school town budget. So.
Jamie Fay, 9 Fellows Road, Finance Committee. Finance Committee recommends unanimously support for this article. As was previously stated, this is an increase in the amount of state aid appropriated for education under Chapter 70, an increase above what we had estimated when we were putting the budget together. So our recommendation is to allow those funds to be used by the school committee and their budget. Just remind everybody that school committee retains control over how money within their total budget gets spent. There's no line item approvals by the town. It's distinct from the prior article, which was dedicated to a specific line item in the budget. We recommend your support.
Select board recommends unanimously. So we'll go to voting on this. Not in favor of the motion, press the red button. 29, the motion passes. I noticed that we have our legislators in the room. We're going to pause and ask them if they want to say a few words to the meeting. In the meantime, it's not clear to me that the overflow room rule has been followed. If you are a voter in the overflow room, you're likely not being counted. There are seats in the main auditorium, and you should come to the main auditorium or stay there if you wish. But I cannot guarantee that your vote will be counted. So please vacate the overflow room and come to the main auditorium. I'll recognize Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good evening, and through you to the members of your town meeting. It's nice to see so many people here engaged in decisions involving local government, and we're happy to be here as well. Mr. Moderator, I'm going to pick up on the segue that was represented by the last warrant article that was approved by this town meeting relative to additional state aid with regard to Chapter 70 for the town school system, and report to you that we're very pleased that this year in the state budget for fiscal year 2025, we were actually able to significantly increase minimum per pupil aid. It had been in the neighborhood of $30 per student. We were able to work in the House and the Senate to increase that number to about $104 per student, which is why you see the number that's reflected up there that you just voted to appropriate. And we're very happy to do that, but I want to add the caveat that while it is important that we increase the numbers for minimum per pupil aid for this community and so many others like it in the suburban region north of Boston, it's also important that we not let up in our efforts to change the formula so that we do not remain in the category of a minimum aid community. We have much greater aspirations for this school district than that. And so we will continue to work toward reestablishing the Foundation Budget Review Commission, which is the first step in changing the Chapter 70 formula, which in turn should yield much more equitable and beneficial results for the Ipswich Public Schools and so many other suburban school systems like the one that we have here in town. So while we bring good news tonight, I also wanted to let everyone know we are not going to accept that as being the end point of our efforts. We still have a long way to go, and we look forward to doing that. Similarly, with regard to unrestricted general government aid, which is more commonly known as just straight local aid, which is what we provide to municipalities for their general government expenses, we were able to increase the amount of money flowing to Ipswich for that as well by nearly an additional $60,000 in the budget for the current fiscal year. And I'm sure if you have not already taken up one of those articles, Mr. Moderator, you will likely have to take one up soon to also appropriate those dollars. So we are working very hard on Beacon Hill. We've had a very unstable revenue climate. We are likely to end the last fiscal year 2024, with not a very substantial surplus after having several years of significant surplus. But we continue to look forward to try to make Massachusetts more competitive, to try to increase those revenue gains so that we can share with communities like Ipswich in things like general unrestricted government aid and Chapter 70. Lastly, I just wanted to report that the operations of the Water Resilience Task Force, which I have reported to you about on so many occasions at town meeting, are going very well. We are now receiving information back from several studies that are going to inform our decisions as to what we can best do as a region to be able to increase our supply of water and make that supply sustainable without adverse impacts on the Ipswich River watershed. So we're making good progress there. We've spent a lot of time designing studies, putting the studies out to bid, having the studies executed, and we're about to get a lot of information back, and we look forward to sharing that with you as well, because we know that it is essential in this community and every other that we have a sustainable drinking water supply, and we also know that it's critical that we protect the resource that's represented by the Ipswich River watershed. So that's a little bit about what's happening not only on Beacon Hill, but here in our communities. I'm extremely proud of the work that we're doing together with the Water Task Force, where every community in the watershed is participating, and I think it's reflective of the kind of effort we need these days, not only in Massachusetts, but in the United States of America. Mr. Moderator, thank you very much for being able to share a couple of minutes.
Hello. It's been a tremendous year. I also want to highlight some of the other work the work related to the Water Resiliency Task Force as well, and thank you to Senator Tarr for convening the group. It's been a joy working with you, as well as highlighting all of the issues and needs we have here for the environment and water quality, and being able to focus a lot of the grant programs that are coming through the state to the Ipswich River watershed, as well as Ipswich itself, for clean drinking water and environmental protection. Another thing I just wanted to highlight is we were able to convene a group with the governor and a lot of the commissioners, as well as our friends at the trustees, Audubon and Essex County Greenbelt, to really talk about marsh restoration and the great work that they're doing right here in Ipswich, as well as within the larger Great Marsh. And we've been working on legislation together, and hopefully moving some things forward to really allow that work to continue to protect us from sea level rise and protect our critical habitats. So thank you so much, and looking forward to continue working with you.
Thank you very much. We'll move to Article number 3, which is the appropriation to Essex Tech.
Try it again.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Good. Charlie Sapitsky, Select Board. I move that the town take no action on Article 3. Ladies and gentlemen, enrollment at the Essex Tech was less than anticipated in May. We have not yet received final budgetary figures from the institution, but we understand and anticipate that the money appropriated in May will be sufficient to cover the cost. And if there's any money that is not used for that purpose, it will revert to free cash in the spring. The Select Board unanimously supports passage of this article.
Thank you. We'll go to the Finance Committee. Chair Emily Smith.
The Finance Committee is moving to propose reducing the Essex Tech budget by $150,000 from $516,330 to $366,330 to save on the current funds and free up those funds for other purposes. This will also take that money out of the estimate for tax calculation at year end.
It's moved and seconded. In that the warned article didn't have dollar figures in it, I rule that the amendment is appropriate. So you may speak to the amendment and perhaps restate the numbers, please. Since we don't have a slide, because we had this was an amendment that had come in after the slides were prepared. That only came in this evening. So the article warned an Essex Tech budget of $516,330. The amendment is to reduce that amount by $150,000, resulting in $366,330 appropriation. It's been moved by the Finance Committee and seconded by the Finance Committee. School Committee, we'll look for a comment from the School Committee on this. Hearing none, we'll go back to Mr. Sapitsky. I'm sorry.
I would just like to stress once again, oh, sorry.
So Jennifer Donahue, 12 High Street for the school committee. We're just hearing this amendment for the first time, and we just want to make sure that this amendment is still going to cover the amount of students that are currently attending Essex Tech, and that the special ed budget is covered.
Since I did a question of the equipment, put to the finance committee, I asked Jamie Fagan.
So just to recap what this is, we had appropriated enough money in the spring to support 22 students going to Essex Tech. The actual number that's going this fall is about 12. So we over appropriated by about 20 students, and each student costs about $20,000. So it's a huge over appropriation. We are recommending we reduce it only by $150,000. I'm sorry, I get the numbers wrong. It's 22 students were going, 12 are now enrolled, so we over-appropriated by 10 students, about $200,000. We're recommending we reduce the budget by $150,000 because we don't need to take that money from you in your taxes because it's not an expense we're going to incur this year. So we're leaving money in your pocket. That's what this does, and there's a buffer of at least 50 grand here just to make sure if there's any extra expenses associated with those 10 students.
School committee's response?
I think we could use more math. I think this decision was probably made just before this meeting, and we just want to see the math on the estimated per student cost.
Is the finance committee able to further address the agenda of the school committee? If not, are there any comments
There we go. So it says in the warrant article that there's 14 students. I believe, Jamie, you said 12. There were originally 22.
You want to answer that, Jen?
Yeah, I'm hearing from my colleagues on the school committee behind me that if there's going to be a change at this time, that we have a precise dollar amount.
Well, I think that we should.
Sorry.
Okay, so
Mr. Moderator.
the school committee does not support this amendment? Yes.
Yeah. Mr. Moderator. Mr. Moderator. Me, over.
Hello, Paul Calaba, Bell Street. So I attended that finance meeting upstairs that was literally just before this meeting. And I can't believe they made it down here so fast because nobody in the building could tell me where it was. Even though I asked the town moderator, excuse me, this is my 3 minutes of talking without you guys saying anything. I get 3 minutes, correct? I'm telling you that I'm leading up to how this vote occurred, okay, with the FinCom meeting that was not published to be in the meeting room. That was right before this meeting. And this Mr.
Calaba, just to remind you that your remarks should be directed at the motion.
I am directing it at the motion and what led up to the motion, which happened just before this meeting. So the motion up there says, I move the town take no action. It means that we're not going to fund this. And then I heard these guys say that they want to reduce it.
No, you misinterpreted.
I moved that the town take no action on Article 3.
That's correct. Which means
So it means that we're not going to fund this.
no,
What?
If you be quiet for a second, I can explain. So just try to be quiet. I know it's hard.
No, it's not hard.
Taking no action means that the appropriation of $516,000, which was made at the annual town meeting in May, stands. So there's $516,330 that stands if we take no action on this article.
Okay, so we've heard that it's way over allocated and it should be changed, and we don't have a dollar amount because we don't have the dollars. And I could tell you right now, and I came to the last town meeting to talk about this, Essex students, we pay $35,000 per student for those students, given the current 22 that we had. Now we only got 12. Please, let me finish.
No, at some point, you need to decide whether you're urging the body to vote for or against the amendment. Are you going there?
I'm saying we should not vote on this at all until we have the dollar amounts.
That's not an option.
I like to amend the motion to say that we should take absolutely no action on this item until we have the dollar amounts, specifically that we could pass a motion that actually has dollar amounts that makes sense.
Let me help you.
And also,
Let me help you with what you want to accomplish. If you don't like the amendment, vote against it.
I'm trying to explain the
Do you
amendment.
have anyone else who wishes to speak to this?
Oh my God.
Mr. Sapinski.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Select Board unanimously is opposed to this amendment, and I'd just like to stress once again that we do not have final figures for the students attending Essex Tech. Until we have that, we want to have, enough money in the budget to take care of their needs. Thank you.
So seeing no one else at any podium, let me explain. Let me explain where we're going here. We had a motion to take no action. It was amended to change the dollar amounts. And that amendment is what we're discussing now, or should be discussing now. So we're going to take a vote on the amendment, which is to amend the motion. And then there'll be a follow-up motion on the amended motion if that amendment passes, or on the original motion if it doesn't pass. So on the amendment, to reduce the appropriation from $516,330 to $366,330. All those in favor of that amendment signify by pressing the green button, number 1, or if you're opposed to the amendment, press number 2, the red button. You do that now.
Okay. This motion still has no, this motion still has no dollar amount.
Were you not listening?
I was.
You apparently were not listening. The amendment is to reduce the appropriation from $516,330 to $360,000. Mr. Callaway, you need to pay closer attention to what's going on. This is not the motion we're voting on. We're voting on an amendment which is not being displayed because we don't have a slide prepared for it because it came in late. The motion to amend is appropriate. And now let's go to a vote. Again, if you are in favor of the amendment which reduces the May appropriation, press 1 or the green button. If you're not in favor of reducing that appropriation, press 2, the red button. We'll vote now. We'll close the voting. The amendment passes. So now we're going to go to a vote, which is to change the appropriation made in May from $566,330 to $360,330. So that is now what you're voting on. So if you're now in favor of that reduction in the appropriation, unless there is someone who wishes to debate the issue. Yes, sir.
Robert Hagerty, 82 High Street. I went to a vocational school myself, the Wakefield Voc, Northeast Regional, and I'm a plumber. I've had a very good career as a master plumber because of that school, and there are a lot of kids out there that just don't do well in school. Doesn't mean they're not smart, doesn't mean they're not talented. They just don't do well in a classroom scenario, and those kids benefit greatly by vocational education. My son went to Whittier and is now a plumber. So I don't think we should reduce this at all. The select board said that if the money isn't used, it goes into free cash. But we're really not getting a whole lot of information from the Finance Committee about this. So I would encourage everybody to, I guess, vote down this, and the appropriation would stay. Is that what's going to happen if we vote it down?
There'll be no change in the appropriation.
Okay.
If it's voted
Thank
down.
you. I encourage everybody to vote no on this.
Are there any other comments or questions? If not, we'll go to a vote.
Thank you. Not having had an opinion before this, I just want to thank sorry? Oh, Deanna Gallagher, 32 Linebrook Road, sorry. I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Pisky for making that very clear with regard to the lack of a final count of the number of students. I think in the interest of making good governance as well as good faith towards the actions of both the people who have made decisions in the past and the kind of the volatility of school budgets in general, I think that making decisions like this on the fly is probably going to end up causing more problems than it actually solves. So I'm going to ask to vote in favor of rejecting this amendment.
So you're actually encouraging the group to vote against.
Yeah.
Jim, I just have-
Translated, vote no, please. Thank you.
Jim,
Yes, ma'am.
Kathleen Spinelli, 27 Pleasant Street. I've spent my life working in education, and I actually worked in a system that worked closely with Essex Tech. I would like to know from any of our town officials when you expect those final enrollments, because the state mandates that all enrollments are reported to DESE on October 1st. So Essex Tech has had 3 weeks to get us that enrollment information. What game are they playing to keep our tax dollars? So I urge you all to vote on the reduction. We know that we've got 12 to 14. We don't have 22. Take back the taxpayer's dollar, send a clear message to Essex Tech that they need to do their jobs in the time frame they're allotted. Thank you.
folks,
Good evening, everyone. We do know the enrollment, but there are special education costs associated with some of the enrolled students that Essex Tech, that are unknown to them, and they have therefore not been able to provide it to us. So enrollment, transportation, that we know. Special ed is not known at this time. They've said they should know that in about another month, but that's not in time for our meeting. And to the comment of school volatility of school budgets, a lot of times that volatility is driven by special ed costs. So that's one of the reasons why err on the side of caution.
I have a point, Jim. I just want to be clear that we are trying to put money back in your pockets. We over-saved here and over-allocated. We do know the enrollment, and we picked the $150,000 figure as a comfortable buffer. We estimate that there's still about $70,000 to account for expenses, and I just want to be clear, the Finance Committee is doing their job by looking out for the taxpayer and trying to return money to you.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll now go to a vote. The vote is to reduce the appropriation by $150,000 from the original 566, 330 to 366, 330. So that's the vote. Is there any question of what we're voting on? It's to reduce the May appropriation for Essex Tech. If you're in favor of the reduction, press 1 or the green button. If you're not in favor of the reduction, press 2, the red button, and vote no. Close the voting. The amendment, or the motion passes, which means that the Essex Tech appropriation has been reduced. Thank you. Article 4, HERO Act. Mr. Doherty.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, and through you to the members of town meeting. Hello, everyone. We have a healthy quorum tonight. That's a good sign. So for Article 4, the HERO Act, I move that the town accept General Law, Chapter 59, subsection 5, clauses 22I and 22J. There's a second. So what is this? Recently, the state legislature passed an act called an Act Honoring, Empowering, and Recognizing Our Service Members and Veterans. And it provided 2 local adoptions which allowed our disabled veterans to have additional exemptions on their property tax. One is tied to inflation, and the other is tied to, based on their disability, furthering the exemption on their property tax. The Select Board is in full support of adopting these 2 local options. I think that the impact financially is very minor. Granted, because the local adoptions haven't been enacted, what we did was we looked at last year's figures, and roughly there would be about 92 currently disabled veterans or their spouses who would qualify for this. And so we figured if they had done so, what would the tax impact have been? And I believe it was roughly about $44,000 with both of those local adoptions taken into consideration. I think this is a great opportunity to help those who served for us and went and gave the sacrifice of protecting our liberties, incurring an injury during that service. And now we have the opportunity, thanks to the legislature, to adopt these 2 local provisions to be able to help them even further in their post-service life. So I strongly urge the town meeting to support this article.
Thank you. Mr. Doherty did an excellent job explaining the benefits of the HERO Act, and I would just like to add that as Ipswich's representative to the Eastern Essex District Veterans Board of Directors, this is an important and long overdue benefit to our disabled veterans and their surviving spouses. The 2 clauses that we're being asked to adopt tonight are directly related to the veteran's percentage of service-related disability or death. We are voting on adopting provisions of the state law that allow us to double the exemption for service-connected death and disability in relation to the percentage of their disability, and to include a cost of living adjustment to exemptions in future years. The budgetary impact is minimal. Ipswich is a very patriotic community with a long history of supporting our veterans. Most recently, just a couple of weeks ago, we very proudly became a Purple Heart community. As Michael said, the Select Board is unanimously in favor of this article, and I urge you to please vote in favor of it. Thank you.
Ken Swenson, Finance Committee, 449 Limebrook Road. The Finance Committee didn't vote at our budget hearings because we didn't have the numbers. We did get the numbers, and the Finance Committee supports this 9-0. As mentioned, it provides added benefits to veterans. It ended up being about 1.7 cents per assessed thousand, which works out to about a little over $13 on the average house tax bill. Thank you.
Thank you. School committee, do you wish to record a vote?
Yes. Diana Freehand, 12 Spillers Lane for the school committee. We support this article in spirit, and we also recognize the nominal impact it will have on our budget. So the school committee unanimously recommends.
Thank you. Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Brad Hill, 16 Birch Lane.
Former representative.
Mr. Moderator, I stand before you with thanks and with advocacy. First, I want to thank the Board of Selectmen, or the Select Board, for putting this before the town meeting. This was not something that was being talked about for a special town meeting, but when the legislature passed it, I thought it was important that we get it before the citizens as quick as possible so that we could have it ready to go for FY25, so that when the budget is passed, it's ready to go. And as you probably know, there is a process that you must take to put a warrant article before a special town meeting, and that would have had me go out and get 100 signatures, which I'm sure I could have done, but there was only about a week left to do it, and I was running out of time due to work obligations. I came before the board, and they put the warrant article, the article on the warrant for us to be able to vote on. So thank you for doing that. I greatly appreciate it. And Mr. Moderator, advocacy. I have worked with many of the individuals who would qualify for these increased benefits, and I have heard their stories and the sacrifices that were made on their families and, of course, the citizens of this nation. I'll not get into those conversations as they are private, but after hearing them, I personally do not care about the minuscule cost that this warrant article will have on our tax rate if it were to be passed. Ipswich has a $60 million budget. We're talking a little bit less than $50,000 that this would affect. So the proposed increase would be less than the $50,000 that was put forth before us, and I believe in the short term that will go down because many of the folks that are getting this benefit are in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. They served in the Vietnam War, the Korean War, and many of those 92 that are on it, for whatever reasons, in the very near future will not be part of this program. I'm going to end with this thought. Ever since I was a young boy in this community, the community has always been grateful for anyone who wore the uniform to protect us. I think we showed how the community feels about its veterans this summer with the turnout at the parade that was put on. We as a community have showed up to the annual Veterans Day services and Memorial Day services to thank our veterans through speeches and words of thanks. Well, we have all been taught that actions speak louder than words. Tonight, we have a chance to say thank you to those individuals who were disabled protecting this nation, not with words, but with action. I hope that the warrant article here before us, number 4, is adopted. And I also hope Article 5 is passed for similar reasons. I'm not going to get up and speak on that one. And I hope it's passed, and I thank you, Mr. Moderator, for giving me the opportunity to speak on this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Any other questions? If not, do we have a, it would be helpful if you intend to speak to come down while the speaker in front of you is making their remarks so that we can be respectful of everyone's time.
Yeah, Mr. Moderator, my apologies for that. This is the first town meeting I've attended. My name is Rich Barbado. I live at 199 County Road. As one of those veterans that left this community to liberate Iraq and had a hand in standing up city councils throughout that country, I certainly won't be the last veteran to come home from war. I think that the good people of this community, I mean that in the strictest definition of the word, we've done it since, whether it was Colonel Appleton leaving for the First World War, Colonel Chatswell leaving to fight in the Civil War. As Linda said, this community has a long history of supporting its veterans and warfighters. So just appreciate your consideration for passing this. Like I said, I'm not going to be the last one. For my unit itself, we've lost 42 of the paratroopers that I fought with to suicide back home here. This area isn't immune to it. It was the entire effort behind dedicating the bridge out here adjacent to the high school. Because in working for VA in Washington, I get an email every time a veteran dies by suicide within the Department of Veterans Affairs. And I got 45 the day that we pulled out of Afghanistan. So just to lend my voice to the choir here in support of this, I would ask you to vote yes, not for myself and the members in the community, but those that are going to come after us. So thank you, sir.
Thank you. Seeing no other speakers, we'll go to a vote. Again, if you're in favor of the motion made on this article, press 1, the green button. If you're opposed, press 2, the red button. Close the voting. The motion passed. 572 to 12. Article 5, senior tax deferral, Mr. Doherty.
Hello. Oh, there we go. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Again, through you to the members of town meeting. Article 5, increase income limits for Clause 41A Senior Tax Deferral Program. I move that the town adjust the current eligibility limits for property tax deferrals under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 5, Clause 41A, as set forth in Article 5 of the warrant for this special town meeting. So, what this is, it addresses another vulnerable population within Ipswich, and that's our senior population, who are limited to incomes that they acquired back when they were working. And what this allows is it allows seniors' income thresholds to be increased in order for them to qualify for a tax deferral program on their real estate property taxes. And how it works, actually, it really is a win-win when you think about it, because the senior is able to defer their taxes, which means they will have a lower cost to live in the community. And then when their home eventually does get sold, either through them or through their estate, the town, through the equity that's in their home, recoups that amount of money and with interest. So you're not only giving an opportunity for a senior citizen to be able to lessen their burden through taxes, but we also are able to recoup that back with interest owed. So with that being the case, I strongly urge that the town of Ipswich support this amendment. And the select board unanimously approved or recommended this article.
Walter Hartford, 3 Mulholland Drive.
This was a article that I was really happy to see come across. In my day job, I deal with people who are looking at their budgets hard, figuring out what they're going to spend on. This, as Michael said, allows us to let them defer their taxes, push into the future. The town will get that money back with interest, and we, as a Finance Committee, completely support this 9-0.
Are there any comments or questions? School committee, give us your
Thank you. Kate Elliott, 273 Argilla Road, School Committee. The School Committee unanimously supports this article. We appreciate the tax burden our seniors face, many of whom are on fixed incomes, and we enthusiastically encourage your support of this article. Thank you.
Other discussion? I'll recognize Sheila Taylor, a familiar face.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Sheila Taylor, Hodgkins Drive. I'm a member of the Senior Property Tax Relief Committee that was formed a year ago to address the concerns of increasing property taxes for older adults in Massachusetts. High property taxes are an issue for all of us, and most especially for seniors who live on a fixed income. We wanted to look at options that might alleviate the burden for local seniors who wish to remain in their homes, despite facing a financial hardship to do so. Our committee looked at many options and met many dead ends at both the local and state levels. There is no question that funding for all programs and services is tight, and that tough decisions must be made by our local officials and legislators. We tried to find a solution that is not funded by our town budget, yet still provides a meaningful impact for older adults who own their own home and would like to stay there. 47% of Ipswich seniors have a yearly household income that is less than $50,000, which makes it difficult, if not impossible, for them to afford an average annual property tax bill of nearly $9,000. Older adults in Massachusetts face extraordinarily high housing costs. A major component of these costs is property tax. Many older adults possess few assets outside of their home equity. The typical home value in Massachusetts has appreciated by nearly 90% in the last decade, compared with a subsequent increase of Social Security benefits of only 27.5%. If a senior homeowner defers the average tax bill of $9,000 per year, that $9,000 can be used for other purposes, including medical expenses, home repairs, fuel, food, and other basic necessities. As we all know, these expenses are rising at a rate that is unsustainable for those on fixed incomes. By increasing this program's income eligibility requirements, more seniors would have the opportunity to utilize the tax deferral program. This option would not require any state or local funding, as it is funded by the current or future owner of the property. We believe that expanding the eligibility of this program will allow seniors to remain in their homes, improve their quality of life, and continue to add value to our diverse community. This small step that we are hoping you will all support will make a big difference for eligible residents. It will not solve everyone's problems, but it is a step in the right direction. Thank you for your support.
School committee, do you wish to be recorded on this? I've already asked the school committee to be recorded for unanimous. Hearing no other comments.
Street.
Use the microphone, please.
Seisha Parent, 2nd Street. What's the, oh, crikey. What's the interest rate going to be? 4%? Okay, I just was curious. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll go to a vote. If you're in favor of the motion as presented, press the green button, number 1. If you're against the motion, press 2, the red button. You vote now. Close the voting. Motion passes 535. Article number 6, open space common council. Select board member Allison.
I move that the town add 56 Fellows Road, also known as Assessor's Map 63, parcel 014, to the town's open space parcel list. Okay. This article would add approximately 14 and a half acres of land to the open space bond parcels list. The entire parcel is in the Water Supply Protection Zone 2, and a parcel of it is within the Water Supply Protection Zone 1 of the Fellows Road Water Supply Well. And the property is bordered by conservation land owned by Essex County Greenbelt and Mass Fish and Wildlife, as well as other parcels that are protected by conservation restrictions. In order to potentially protect this land in the future through the open space bond authorization, it must first be added to the list by a town meeting vote, which is the purpose of this article tonight. I want to be clear that there is no request at this time to purchase the land, only to add it to the list for future consideration. No decisions about potential purchase would be made without public engagement if and when such an opportunity arises. Voting yes on this article has no fiscal impact on the taxpayers, and the Select Board unanimously supports this article. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Burke.
Joe Burke, 18 Bush Hill Road. Linda just stole my thunder. The Finance Committee unanimously supports Article 6 by a vote of 9-0. As Linda said, we're only adding this parcel to the list at this time. We're not buying the property. However, this property protection, eventual protection of this property is consistent with the town's vision in terms of conservation and water supply protection. It's a very sensitive area out there, close to the Fellows Road well. Your approval here this evening will have no fiscal impact on the tax rate. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the school committee wish to take a position? Any comments or questions from the floor? Before we go to a vote, Mr. Burke, I sympathize with your comment about Ms. Allison stealing your thunder. She often does the same to me, so so motion made. This parcel to the open space fund list. All those in favor, press 1 the green button. Press 2 the red button. Opposed. So 1 in favor. Close the vote. Passes 501 to 34. Move to Article number 7. Debt exclusion for energy efficiency improvements. Mr. Leonard, please start.
Okay. Are we live? Okay. Carl Nyland, 34 Brownville Avenue, member of the Select Board. I move that the town appropriate the sum of $7,896,070 for the purposes set forth in Article 7 of the warrant for this special town meeting, and to meet this appropriation, authorize the treasurer, with the approval of the Select Board, to borrow said sum pursuant to Chapter 44 of the Massachusetts General Laws, provided, however, that this vote shall not take effect until the town votes to exempt from the limitation on total taxes imposed by Chapter 59, Section 21C of the Massachusetts General Laws, Prop 2.5, amounts required to pay the principal of and interest on the borrowing authorized by this vote as set forth on the ballot for November the 5th, 2024 election. and further that any premium received upon the sale of any bonds or notes approved by this vote, less any such premium applied to the payments of the cost of issuance of such bonds or notes, may be applied to the payment of costs approved by this vote in accordance with Chapter 44, Section 20 of the Massachusetts General Laws, thereby reducing the amount authorized to be borrowed to pay such costs by a like amount. Very good. Let's have the first slide, please. So occasionally, an article comes before us that presents an opportunity that has great value to the town at very, very low risk. I believe Article 7 is an example of one of those opportunities. It allows us, would allow us the opportunity to reduce energy use across a number of our buildings and facilities in town, to reduce the costs associated with that energy use, and also, in so doing, reduce the carbon or greenhouse gas emissions from those buildings. It would reduce our capital operating and maintenance costs through reduced energy. It would allow us to meet the goals set forth in our carbon resolution with such a target for carbon reduction in the town. It actually would allow us to exceed our 2025 target by about 10%. And it would provide more efficient and more comfortable buildings for the occupants. It does this through a well-established process, through the hiring of what's called an energy services company who implements energy measures known as energy conservation measures, things like LED light replacement or weatherization, and uses what's known as an energy service performance contract, which ties the compensation of the contractor to the pledges they make for performance under the contract. We can go to the next slide. So what kind of improvements are we talking about here? There are improvements across a number of buildings in town, most focused on this building and on the town hall, two of our largest energy consumers and most well-used buildings. It includes LED light replacements where those have not yet been done, the implementation of energy management systems in this building and the town hall that will provide finer grain control over energy use in the building. It includes weatherization here and at Town Hall, and as you may know from some of the history of this building in particular, we've had a number of issues with poor insulation causing frozen pipes, leaks, damage, and disruption. Could avoid all of that. Water conservation through low-flow fixtures and equipment. The replacement, which is much needed, of the heating system at the town hall with what's called a VRF heat pump system, an electric system. Big feature of that is it would provide both heating and cooling to the entire building. The building today is largely not air conditioned. It provides for a solar array here at the middle high school, at the parking lot. This would provide on-site generation of a significant percent of this building's electrical requirements, and also sets us up to subsidize the eventual replacement of the heating system here with an electric system. And then there are a couple other improvements, the last three on the list, that have to do with maintenance and improvements and cleaning of existing HVAC systems here in the building. We can go to the next slide. The approach used a competitive bid process and an eventual award to this ESCO called Noresco. They actually are a Massachusetts-based company. They've been in business for about 40 years. They're now part of a much larger company called Carrier Corporation, who's been in business for, I think, 110 years, not going anywhere. They conducted what's called an investment-grade audit, which means they look in detail across all our facilities in town at how energy is used, what it costs, and so forth. And then they selected the optimal set of conservation measures from that audit, and those are the ones you saw on the previous list, those that yield the greatest energy savings and associated greatest cost savings. Once these implementation is done, which will take about 12 months, so it gets done pretty rapidly, we'll start to generate energy savings and associated cost savings right away. And in case you wonder, not only are the upfront costs of the installation included in our cost estimates, but so are the ongoing maintenance and operational costs. And most interestingly, Noresco is contractually obligated to audit and verify that the savings they say we will achieve actually are achieved for the life of the project. So that's the next 20 years. Next slide, please. Cost for the project. To implement these measures I described will cost about $7.9 million. That's money the town will have to borrow. We don't have that in the bank. That can be reduced by incentives and grants that we've identified. Currently, there are a guarantee of about $1.4 million in federal grants and also some dollars from investor-owned utilities. And it could increase another $866,000 with a couple of additional grants we're pursuing. There'll be a 20-year bond roughly done at some point, and the cost of that will be the $7.9 million minus the grants we get, so about $6.5 million. Energy savings, the costs we save from energy reductions over the life of the project will pay for an estimated 95% of the project. So net cost to the town for $7.9 million of improvements will be about $500,000. Next slide, please. The taxpayer impact, I'm sure what you all want to know. First, we reduce the borrowing amount with the incentives I mentioned, and we'll continue to look for additional incentives to reduce the borrowing further. The second intent is that we reduce as much as possible the so-called excluded debt. That means new costs, new borrowing added to the tax bill. And the way we're going to do that is through a policy the Select Board has set up. My colleague will talk about that in just a moment. For scenario purposes, if we were to exclude all the debt, $7.9 million of debt, the cost to the taxpayer on the average home would be $78 a year. But because of incentives, because of the policy the Select Board has put in place, the taxpayer impact will be far, far less. Next slide. So benefits. One, we will increase the energy efficiency of the affected buildings, including the conditioning and the enjoyment of the building or comfort of the building for the people that use it. We will meet or actually exceed the town's carbon reduction goals. Make note of the next two. We will be guaranteed that the cost of implementation and that the energy cost savings will be met by the company Noresco. If they don't meet them, they pay for it. We also will avoid the potential expense of emergency replacement of failed equipment. That is an issue we may face someday at Town Hall. We also avoid the upfront cost of doing projects piecemeal. Do them all together, there's cost efficiencies in doing them all at once. So risks, if we don't approve this. Well, one, we'll continue to consume energy at a higher level, and we'll pay the cost to do so. Two, we'll lose the guarantee on future projects and on the energy savings associated with the implementation of those projects. We would lose available grants, and those grants are not going to be around forever. We will increase, therefore, the project costs and the cost to the taxpayer, and users of the buildings will have to continue to suffer through substandard conditions. So with the moderator's permission, I'd like to ask my colleague, Michael Doherty, to come up and tell you a little bit about the Select Board policy.
Thank you, Carl, and thank you, Mr. Moderator. Typically, how this works is a project comes before the town that the Select Board or some entity proposes, and we talk about all the benefits that can come about that project and how it would add to the value of the town, how it would reduce energy, what have you. But the Select Board decided on this particular one to go one step further and create a policy that ties the savings to this project. Because we wanted to make sure that on that 20-year life of the bond, year 15, 16, 17, when who knows how many of us will be in this room at that time, we are not forgetting the promise that we made here tonight, which was that any energy savings that we see because of the Noresco project's implementation go towards paying down the debt, go towards making sure that we have as minimal of a tax impact as possible. I think that one thing we need to take into consideration is that we have a kind of best of both worlds situation here, because we have a project that not only will it be completed in a one-year time frame instead of piecemealing it over time, but it will do significant value in reducing our greenhouse gases while giving us a return through not only grants and incentives, but having to spend less money on energy. Especially this building, for example, one of the largest consumers of energy, will be offset because of this project. And those cost savings will be captured in the next fiscal year to go back into the project. And this policy that the Select Board created with the help of the Finance Committee, with input from the School Committee, during open sessions, multiple weeks of discussion, that was just signed last night and adopted, will help do that and will help reduce the cost. I think that if you're on the fence on these types of projects, one thing that you got to keep in mind is that we're not only benefiting the town through our energy reduction, but our cost savings as well. And this is definitely a project where even I was skeptical at first, but after going through the steps and seeing not only the benefits that we're going to see long-term for our environment, but also the financial benefits on the tail end of things, it just makes sense to approve. So with that, considering the policy that shows your government's commitment to make sure that we keep the promises that we're making here tonight, I urge you, along with my colleagues on the Select Board, to support Article 7. Thank you.
Leah Crespi, 5 Cottage Street for the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee voted at our public hearing on September 10th to support this unanimously on the condition that the Select Board institute a robust policy to capture the financial savings in future budget planning sessions, with a specific goal of reducing taxpayer impact. As of tonight, the Finance Committee still supports this article unanimously. In addition to the details of the town's new NORESCO savings policy, which Michael just outlined for us, the Finance Committee spent a considerable amount of time, including an extra deep dive session focused only on NORESCO, reviewing the financial merits of the project. As a committee, we agree that completing this work through NORESCO will, number one, minimize overall project costs by taking advantage of NORESCO's contractor relationships and economies of scale. 2, maximize our savings by completing all of the work in 2025, which guarantees incentive savings of $1.4 million and gives us the chance to pursue over $800,000 more in known incentive opportunities. Number 3, eliminate project risk to the town because NORESCO assumes all the project risks. Number 4, insure us against a base level of financial loss because NORESCO guarantees a given level of energy savings, which translates into lower energy bills, or else they reimburse us for the difference. And number 5, significantly reduce the risk associated with various end-of-life capital assets. Furthermore, the NORESCO project will give us the opportunity to modernize our HVAC control systems so we can actually optimize for usage in the season. And we will begin to see a significant level of energy savings as early as fiscal year 2026. When it comes to the individual taxpayer impact, the numbers included in your handbook are the worst-case scenario. The estimated $78 a year would be the average tax increase if we borrowed the whole $7.9 million over 20 years. However, it's worth noting that depending on the exact method of financing we use through the town and with the new savings policy in place and potentially more incentives, the tax impact could be as low as $24 a year, tapering off to 0 before that 20. So it's like a downhill starting at 24. On top of the financial and project management benefits we gain through a contract with NORESCO, this project will give us the only real opportunity we have to actually meet our climate goals for 2025 and beyond. Without this project, Ipswich will fall significantly short of our carbon reduction goal for 2025 and potentially lose our Green Communities designation. In summary, the Finance Committee believes the NORESCO project is a financially sound project that would be a good investment for our community. The major point of disagreement to date has been around the details of how best to reduce the tax impact and track our savings internally. However, the Finance Committee is now confident that with the policy voted and approved by the Select Board last night, we have the financial principles in place to ensure the savings will be substantial and offset the costs.
Thank you. School Committee position?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Kate Elliott, 273 Argilla Road, School Committee. The School Committee voted 6-0 in support of Article 7. The school buildings, and particularly this building, the middle school, high school, are direct beneficiaries of this project. As you've heard stated already this evening, the middle school, high school is a huge consumer of energy, and this project will make a significant impact on our utility bills. make our building envelope more energy efficient through sealing leaks, more insulation, better weather stripping, improving door seals, etc. And the LED lighting upgrades, which we have been chipping away at through our annual capital plan, will be completed in its entirety through this project, improving both energy efficiency, but also the lighting environment and learning conditions at all 4 schools, an immediate impact with quick payback. This forward-thinking project will also help meet the middle school, high school electrical needs when the current heat system is replaced down the road. Going from a fossil fuel system to an electrical system down the road will be easier if the electricity is generated on site. Overall, this project will make our buildings more efficient, cut our utility bills, and set us up well for the future. Please support this article and show our students we value and are willing to invest in maintaining our municipal and school buildings. Thank you.
Let's see here. There we go. Thank you, Moderator Engel. I'm Sarah Simon. I live at 9 Farley Avenue. I bought my first home here more than 50 years ago, under the elm at the bottom of High Street, and my mortgage was from the Ipswich Cooperative. I've seen our volunteer town committees and municipal officials bring Ipswich into the 21st century. Our community works pretty well. It's a great place to live. But I've been surprised, honestly shocked, to watch my property taxes go up in the 7 years I've been retired. High taxes hurt, but I have to remember that my house value has gone up too. Maybe that's part of it. I also have realized that quite a few of our recent big-ticket tax-raising items show clearly that Ipswich has not had a good record on maintenance and controlling infrastructure operating costs. I need to remind myself that deferring maintenance makes it more expensive, even at my house. I'm very pleased that our town has hired Noresco, an energy services company, to study our town energy costs and figure out what we can do to reduce those expenses. And I think our committees, I thank them for supporting this contract. Ipswich today spends $1 million each year on our municipal energy bill, with the schools paying $800,000 of that. We can save money when they finish the work next year. The package of improvements in the Noresco contract for Article 7, which I would approve, can save nearly half of our annual energy costs. They'll be installing better insulation at the high school and middle school and town hall. As they've said, we're replacing outdated equipment, improving heating, expanding cooling systems as well. The thermostats and energy management software is going to be modernized and actually control room comfort. Many other energy efficiency improvements are going to be made that use electricity. We'll recoup savings from energy efficiency and move away from relying on the global prices of oil and gas. I can't imagine that our fuel costs and energy will do anything else but go up in the next years. The Question 7 debt exclusion will allow us to do this work with a small tax rate increase now, and when it's finished, we'll be able to get back some of the state and federal tax dollars that are available to us now as incentives and rebates. It will lower the price in our long-term debt. Where's the rest of this? Town boards have agreed to use the savings and incentives to lower our tax rate. One more comment on electricity. The Ipswich Electric Light Department has kept the rate we pay for each kilowatt hour to half of what Eversource and National Grid customers pay. Their planning and town investment, approved by us, gives us 80% clean energy. This lower priced power is a result of their investments in wind, solar, and nuclear generating plants, and an adequate operating and maintenance budget. Please vote with me for Noresco to build this energy-saving infrastructure package. What's more, the money we pay for our electricity after this package is finished is money that comes back to our town.
Hi, Michelle Hodge, 10 Birch Lane. Quick question. Was this he won the bid, this company, Noresco. Were they the lowest bidder? Anybody know? Were they the lowest bidder to win the contract? Secondly, I need to know what the guarantees are in place that if they do not fulfill the guarantees that they're making to the town, what recourse do you have? What do you know about them to make sure? Because the guys that built this high school that was finished in 1999 did a terrible job. We all know that. They didn't insulate. My husband would have to get up at 2 in the morning because the pipes would explode because the people that built this were the lowest bidders. So let's make sure. I'm all for improvements. We need this. We have to move forward for our kids, for our grandkids. We need to make this planet better. We have to lower our costs. And also, I want to make sure if you guys are getting as many grants as you can to pay for this, because a lot of the wealthier towns get half of this paid for. So I need you to dig in everybody's pockets, because there's old people in this town, so we need to protect them. But can somebody answer that? Was he the lowest bidder? Go ahead.
There we go. Carl Nyland again, Select Board. To answer your questions, thank you for the questions. No, this was not a low bid project.
And how did he get the contract?
It was based on qualifications.
And what was it? How many years? I think I forgot. How many years was the qualifications? And what other towns has he worked on? I will, and I need to get my questions in. I have 3 minutes. Do not interrupt me. Thank you, Carl. Go ahead.
So to answer your other questions, Noresco is, as I mentioned, they've been in business for about 40 years, part of a much larger business. I hear your comment about the unfortunate state of the contractor who built this building. I think in this case, we're in much better hands with a much more well-established company who's done this multiple times, including in other towns whose reference we've checked in the immediate area. And again, they'll be contractually obligated to do this work. There'll be penalties in the contract if they fail to meet them. And I'd also note that it's one of the benefits of doing these improvements in relatively short order. So in 12 months, the work will be done, the improvements will be installed, and the benefits from it will start to accrue regardless of what happens with the company. So I hope that answered the question. Oh, one other question. You didn't talk about grants. Heartily agree there. We have not given up on additional grants. I mentioned another $900,000 we are pursuing, and throughout the life of the project, we'll continue to look aggressively at any other way to subsidize the cost of the project.
16 Seaview Road. I speak in favor of Article 7, the Noresco project. My personal experience as a homeowner in Ipswich demonstrates my reasons for supporting the article. 12 years ago, my wife and I were eager to lower our energy costs and shrink our carbon footprint. I looked into adding solar panels to our house. At the time, there was a considerable array of credits available, but the project would cost us quite a bit initially. We were hesitant, so we asked our kids. Their response was immediate. Here was a chance to do something to address the challenges of the future. We'd be getting a substantial amount of money back. Why wouldn't we? So we forged ahead. Now, this many years later, our system has been totally paid for by the credits we've accumulated, the diminished power we need to purchase, and the profits that come when we sell power back. The success of this solar project emboldened us to add a heat pump about 4 years ago, and the same pattern occurred. Less energy consumed and lower fuel purchases needed, plus a smaller carbon impact. The Noresco project offers us the chance to do the same thing for the whole town. Yes, we have to spend some money up front, but then we'll qualify for substantial energy credits and rebates. We'll need to purchase less energy. We'll move closer to meeting our climate goals, not to mention avoiding the trouble that will surely come if we don't upgrade some of the aging aspects of the energy systems in our town buildings. But most importantly, we'll be taking a step forward and trying to address the challenging future we're passing on to our kids. Do we want them to look at us and say one day, "Why didn't you do something?" Please join me in voting in favor of this article tonight and in favor of on question 6 on Election Day. Thank you.
Jim, Dan Kelly, 6 North Main Street. Would you mind putting the article back up that we're voting on? Yes.
Remember, this article is on 2 slides.
Yes.
Tell us which
Well, let's see the first slide. I would encourage everyone to look in the Finance Committee book at the Article 7, which is what we're actually voting on. All it says is that we are approving a energy services contract for $7.9 million. That's it. This is a Prop 2.5 override. We're going to be taxed over and above our property taxes for an unspecified energy services contract for $7.9 million. All of the slides that Mr. Nyland put up there, they're not in the article. The contract is completely unspecified. There's not a date to it. There are no terms and conditions. There's no provisions or itemization as to how that $7.9 million will be used. The policy that Mr. Doherty mentioned, that the Select Board put in place, that's not in this article. There's nothing to prevent the Select Board next year from changing that policy with regard to keeping the costs of any energy efficiencies. There's nothing in this article about reductions with respect to grants. We've all heard, how many times have we heard, oh, there are going to be grants available? Have we gotten any guarantee that these grants are going to be available? Have we gotten any guarantee in this article that we're voting on that it's not going to cost us anything in the long run because Noresco is going to pick up the tab? That's not there. We haven't seen the contract. I don't think they've even signed the contract yet. This is pie in the sky stuff, fiddling around with our money, $7.9 million. And the one slide that Mr. Nyland did not put up there, which I found in the audit report by NESCO, is how this $7.9 million breaks down. Why didn't Mr. Nyland put that up there? Well, one of the reasons he might have not put it up there is I think the sticker shock by looking at the cost alone of the solar PV carport. It's $3.44 million. $3.44 million for a solar PV carport. Folks, we have overrides coming at us. We know they're coming for the public safety building, for the new school, for God knows what. We should not approve this in this form. Thank you very much.
Mr. Moderator? Mr. Moderator? Behind you, Mr. Moderator.
We go to the vote. I'm sorry, we have a question. This is a procedural question, is it?
Procedural, no. Questions on the proposal.
Okay, then we're going to wait.
Sure.
Okay. Mr.
Thank you. Carolyn Britt, One Shirebark Woods, and it was my responsibility for not having the Climate Resiliency Committee take a formal position. That was an oversight. 4 of us are already speaking, 4 of the members of the committee. So it didn't seem that, we were all over this. So thank you. So town officials, in an effort to be fully transparent, have provided town citizens with worst-case numbers. But I think that, as Carl was going towards, we expect those numbers to be much better. And we can hear from the perpetual naysayers of anything that smacks of being appropriate or energy savings. Let's move on from that and listen to what the real issues are expected to be. As Carl noted, we're asking for a bond authorization because we have to legally ask for the full amount of the bond that could potentially be spent. We need to bond for the full amount, but it's going to be reduced with some certainty by another 1.4 million and another 800,000 that Carl also mentioned. The net project cost to the town is also in table 3 that we have had, shaken in front of us. The net project cost to the town is a total of $466,000 spread over 15 years of net payments. And then we have 5 years to pull out the 20 years of no payments where we have net income. But what does that mean for how we think about the financial demand on the town and taxpayers? Annual cost for repayments of debt and operation and maintenance in excess of energy and expense savings are projected to range from $130,000 in year one, $79,000 in year two, $75,000 in year four, and about $50,000 in year 8 per year in its entirety for the town, net outlay. We heard earlier this evening, Mr. Hill referred to that as, let's see, it wasn't a pittance, it was, you know, a minuscule amount. That's what we're talking about. If we voted for the HERO Act, we voted, which is in that range of $75,000, without even thinking, of course we do that, because it was a good idea. I think with the with the senior tax benefits, we don't even know what that number is, but it's an important idea. These, we have the most assurances of any of these that we know what the numbers are, and it is also a good idea. These are comparable to 75,000 is comparable. Excuse me. I got a few. Oh, I see. I'm sorry. My bad. Could I finish what I was saying, Jim?
I'll moderate the meeting if people don't mind. One sentence, Carolyn. Mr. Marsh.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to make a motion to amend the article.
Please.
I move to amend Article 7 as follows: that the levy limit be reduced by an amount equal to the amount of debt payments related to this project.
Is there a second? Did I hear a second?
Who's making the amendment?
Ed Marsh, Woods Lane.
You want to repeat your amendment so people are clear? And then Mr. Farrell, if you have a question, I'll come to you.
I move to amend Article 7 as follows: that the levy limit be reduced by an amount equal to the amount of debt payments related to this project.
And do I hear a second?
It was already seconded.
I'm just making sure. I asked you to repeat the motion. I'll ask her to repeat it in a second. I hear a second. Mr. Marsh, I'm looking at the amendment, and again, this is the difficulty that we all face when amendments come from the floor because we haven't had an opportunity to look at them closely. I don't believe, well, I will assert that town meeting has no authority to reduce the levy limit. And so your motion as worded to reduce the levy limit is out of order. If your intent is to remove the exclusion, then the amendment should be written differently. But we as a town meeting have no authority. We cannot reduce the levy limit.
Well, the town meeting can pass an underride,
The town meeting can pass an underride.
so by definition, they can.
That's right. They can, but that has not been warned. And so this meeting has no authority to reduce the levy limit. So I move that.
So then how do you propose that it be rewritten? The point is, we're talking about this Mickey Mouse arrangement with some bank account where hopefully money's going to be set aside. We've been promised and promised and promised that this thing pays for itself. Well, if it pays for itself, then it's straightforward. Take that amount out of the annual town budget so that there can't be monkey shines. Money is fungible. You start saving money in one place and pissing it away somewhere else, then before you know it, there is no savings. So how do we lock it in?
We lock it in with a different motion at a different town meeting.
A different motion at a different town meeting?
Yes, because it has not been properly warned.
Well, I'm not comfortable with that answer. I mean, let's work to see how it needs to be written now then.
Yes. And I believe she, again, I'll moderate the meeting if you don't mind. Or perhaps you do mind. I believe that town council supports my position. That you cannot vote to reduce the levy limit unless it's been properly warned
So is that the position of the town council?
I heard her say yes, yes. Thank you. Mr. Fierro.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ben Fierro, Northridge Road. I have two questions. I'll pose the questions and sit. Oh, I'm sorry.
I think it's on.
How's that? Thank you. Usually I can be heard. Ben Fierro, Northridge Road. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'll pose two questions and I'll sit down and await the answer. My first question has to do with the proposed solar panels on the carport. My question is there an estimate as to how much electricity would be produced from these solar panels? And then where will that electricity, how will that be used? Will it be used to offset electricity usage here for this building or otherwise? So first question is estimate of electricity produced from these solar panels, where will they be used? And then my second question has to do with the guarantee from Noresco. Does Carrier is a large multinational corporation, Noresco's parent company, are they providing any backing, any financial backing or guarantees relative to the savings? And I pose that question because I have the pleasure every morning of getting up and looking out from my home and I see two wind turbines. And one of those turns. And it's a beautiful thing and it produces renewable green energy. But the other wind turbine hasn't turned in 5, 6, 7 years because the company that produced the engine, the motor, which I guess burned out, went bankrupt. The company that built the wind turbine went bankrupt, and the company that put it forward went bankrupt, so the town has no security, bond, letter of credit to pay for its removal because today it is a blight on the natural environment. Thank you.
Mr. Mallon has listed the questions you have. But again, I'm going to ask that the question mic is for questions of procedure. I think I appreciate the question, but I think it should have been delivered from one of the other podiums. Mr. Mallon, would you be able to address Mr. Fierro's question?
I will, and I'd like to address a few others, if I might, Mr. Moderator, while I'm here. To address Mr. Fierro's question, the answer is... I will. The answer is that the solar array would generate 757,000 kilowatt hours. That amounts to about 40% of the electrical consumption of the building. It would all be consumed on site by this building, not sent back to the grid. The other questions or comments I wanted to respond to were, in a previous speaker, Mr. Moderator had mentioned that grants were, I think the question was, are they guaranteed? Yes, they are. Two grants in particular that make up the $1.4 million I mentioned. One is a grant, a gas utility incentive grid from National Grid, $566,000. The other is a federal tax credit, which if you follow the Inflation Reduction Act, may sound curious, but local governments, towns are eligible for tax credits under the IRA, and that will be $877,364, guaranteed grants. I also heard the term used, unspecified. There is a very detailed 70-page investor-grade audit that anyone can look at, public document. It describes in great detail every aspect of what we talked about tonight, every improvement, the cash flows, the incentives, the grants. I'd encourage you to take a read. You will find it is not at all unspecified. It's quite clear and well documented. And I would also note, in response to the question about a contract, no, a contract has not yet been written because the project has not yet been approved. Once it is, we will generate a contract with Noresco. The public would be free to review that contract to be sure it meets whatever requirements you may have. And I would also finally note, the comment was made that I said the contract pays for itself. It does not, and I did not say that. I said it mostly pays for itself, and made note that there's about $466,000 at least that the town will have to come up with. So just to be clear on what the expectation set for the project. Thank you.
Mr. Shaw?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm here to answer the second question from Mr. Fierro. I've been working and volunteering in state and local government long enough to not hold value when government tells me something is guaranteed. And I think that is one of the initiations on why the Select Board decided to move forward with a policy that does its best to capture the savings. And what I'd like to do is just say one thing and one clarifying point relative to the wind turbine is that we're kind of comparing apples and oranges here, because let's remember exactly what that situation was. The wind turbine was owned by a company that was on top of land owned by the town, which we leased to that company. Unfortunately, there was a mistake and there was oversight, and that's why we have a non-functioning wind turbine owned by a private company that's currently on town-owned land. This is a project that addresses town-owned property that is owned by the town, that are improvements for the town, and the company doing the work is obviously fully insured and bonded, and we will be making sure of that as we move forward with a signed contract if this gets passed. But one more thing about the policy. The reason why the policy, to talk to Mr. Kelly's point earlier, is not in the article is because you're talking about two different types of government here, right? Or two different levels of government, I should say. This is the legislative body that approves money-related things, whereas the policy is an executive branch-related thing where we enact those savings from the monies that were spent at town meeting. So the policy is not necessary to actually approve this article and move forward with the project. However, the Select Board, the Finance Committee, and the School Committee thought it made sense to put forth a policy to make sure that we are doing our due diligence, holding forth with our fiscal responsibility, and making sure that we have the discipline to take those savings that would be incurred by NORESCO and reapply them back to the project to have as little impact as possible. So to your point, Mr. Fierro, no, there is no specific guarantee on funding. However, we are going to do our best to capture those savings, reapply them to the project. That's the whole purpose of the policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Schaaf, Shagbark Woods. Previous speaker was is my roommate, as it were. The town of Ipswich, like towns and cities across the nation, is largely engaged in the business of providing infrastructure that residents use to carry out their daily lives. Let's talk about pie in the sky here. The town builds and maintains roads, buildings, utilities, parks, and amenities that enable residents to work, shop, play, and officials to manage this infrastructure and provide services, such as education. Every single day, that's no pie in the sky. This project is a very unique project. The town typically raises taxes to pave your road or to build this building. It raises taxes for the personnel that operate them. Yes, we obtain some grants, for example, for roads on a regular basis, and we've heard about some good news from our delegation about some additional funds coming in. But the taxes, property taxes that we receive are the primary source of funding for town facilities and operations. And the NORESCO project is unique in several ways and needs to be appreciated. It is not substantially reliant on tax dollars to carry it out. This is as close to a freebie as you're going to get. The total cost, as has been pointed out, is guaranteed by a major corporation. No cost overruns, no uncertainties. Paying for the infrastructure relies on non-tax revenue substantially, as Carl has pointed out, requiring little or no tax support. The energy savings generating most of this income is contract guaranteed by a major corporation. An little additional town effort is necessary to carry this out, as NORESCO will implement it. Can we rely on a town to carry this out? I believe so. It's a complex project, but as I pointed out, town performs daily, the schools perform daily. The project implementation is carried out by a capable entity that's done this before. The NORESCO budget funds special maintenance required to carry out this project, and the town will receive regular reports concerning the performance of NORESCO and the infrastructure improvements. This is a good deal. I urge your support.
My name is Cheryl Coleman. I'm at 6 Essex Road in Ipswich, and thank you for letting me speak. I've been here for 30 years. I've owned 3 different homes. I consider myself to be a fiscally responsible homeowner. I'm also someone who loves to do home projects and home improvements. So from that perspective, it seems like a lovely project, a nice project. However, I classify my projects into needs and wants, and I do my projects by priority when I have the money to do them. What I'm seeing on the slides that you've put up is a price tag of close to $8 million, subtracting out some grant money, but then there's still $6.5 million to be accounted for in a bond. So if I was going to do a home project and had that kind of money or any kind of substantial money that I had to take a loan for the project, I would really think very long and hard about that in a fiscally responsible manner. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sarah Coyle. I'm at 10 Manning Street in Ipswich. And I'm here also to ask for people's... Can you all hear me? Okay. I'm Sarah Coyle. I live at 10 Manning Street. I'm also here to ask for your support. I took a look at the report that was referenced earlier that's public information about NORESCO's investment grade audit. And in it, I saw that the town has about $1 million a year utility bill that is spread across 10 different buildings, and about 400,000 of that could be eliminated by making these improvements. So you're already spending $400,000 a year in utility costs that aren't really going anywhere except for out the leaky buildings or to expensive equipment that's 30 years old and is about to go kerplunk. So I'm not really sure what the difference between spending money on utility bills that's going out into the atmosphere and spending money that's going to pay a bond back. I mean, personally, I'd rather take that $400,000 and put it into paying the bond so we have equipment that will last for another 30 years and will fix this building and the town hall. It seems to me that having the ability to cool the town hall as the summers are getting hotter and people are using town hall more would be a good thing. It would be a good thing to reduce the maintenance and operations cost of these big pieces of equipment. I just don't understand why it's better to spend money wastefully in the town budget rather than take those funds and direct them to debt repayment. Thank you.
I see you're ready to speak, so I'd like to go to a vote. So hearing no objection, we'll go to a vote on this. Since I see no one standing at a mic, I'd like to go to a vote. So
move the question.
Before Mr. Calabar starts and stops, I would. Moving the question is not going to be recognized being yelled from the floor. If you want to move the question, go to a microphone. And wait your turn. Mr. Calabar, what can I do for you? We're not voting, Mr. Calabar.
Hello? So, Paul Calabar, Bell Street. So, I hear this guarantee thing over and over and over again. There is no contract, thus there is no guarantee on anything. What they have agreed to is if there's some kind of deficit in the savings on energy, they will make that up. Has nothing to do with cost overruns. Somebody just said cost overruns are included in here. Is every department going to track maintenance and cost for this new system? Is that account been set up? Because I haven't seen the policy, which was just decided on last night, so I have no idea what's in it, but it seems that if we do have some overruns or we do have some unexpected costs, that should come directly out of that fund to pay for. So I'm hoping that's what the policy says. Is that what the policy says?
I think there's a simple clarification in terms, and I'll ask for a precise and a clarification.
Precise and quick is yes, is the answer to your question. Yes, the policy establishes what is known as a stabilization account. That's where all monies will be deposited, so you can track what's pulled from the departments from energy savings and then how it's applied to the debt. We will review that and audit it every year during the budget process. You're welcome to review and verify yourself.
Okay, but I'm not talking about revenue from cost savings. I'm talking about maintenance of the new system costs.
The maintenance.
Every department would have to create an account to track operationally what this new infrastructure would cost the town, and if there are issues like there were with the windmills and whatever else, that is going to offset that savings amount that because that's the only thing they're guaranteeing. They're not guaranteeing the cost of the project. No, they're not. There's no contract that says that. Is there a contract that says that they're guaranteeing the cost of the project?
We haven't written the contract yet. We haven't reached that phase of the project. So are the construction costs guaranteed? Yes, they are. Are the energy savings guaranteed? Yes, they are. That translates into cost savings. You estimate cost savings based on things like the cost of energy, and as you know, those change year to year. So we have estimates on what those will look like. That's what the numbers I gave you are based upon. Every one of the departments already tracks the items you're talking about down to a line item that you can see in the town budget. And what we will do is pull information from those line items and deposit it into a central account.
All right, so I'm going to ask for some added time because that was a long explanation and took away from my time. But remember what happened with the windmills. That's what I got to say to you. Remember, if you put carports in the high school parking lot, who do you think they're going to plow that? Is there added cost for that?
Mr. Calabar, you have 20 seconds finished. You're walking away that you're finished. Sir.
Mr. Moderator, John Doonan, Topsfield Road. I move the question.
The question has been moved. It's not debatable. We must immediately go to the question. So the motion as presented is what we're voting on. It authorizes the borrowing of $12.9 million. It is subject to, the committee also asked to exclude it under Proposition 2.5. I'm sorry, it's 7.1. I'm sorry, 7.1. I've been looking at the numbers. I'm reminded that since the question has been moved, we vote on moving the question. My mistake. Thank you, sir. So, to move the question, which is basically to stop debate, that is what's before you. If you wish to stop debate, press 1, the green button. If you wish to continue the debate, press 2, the red button. Moving the question with the simple majority, and it carries. So now we go to the main motion. And again, the main motion is to authorize the debt and to exclude the debt under Proposition 2.5. So if you're in favor of the motion, press 1, the green button. If you are against,
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Tony Morad, 106 Central Street, Chair for the Planning Board. I move to amend the Ipswich Protective Zoning Bylaw as printed in Article 8 of the Special Town Meeting warrant, except that Section 9VH shall, by substitution, read H, affordability requirements. Multifamily housing created under this Section 9V shall comply with the following. Number 1, 10% of the rental developments in multifamily overlay districts 1, 2, and 3 shall have rents affordable to households earning 60% area median household income. A minimum of 1 affordable unit will be required for rental developments of more than 9 units. Number 2, 10% of mixed-use rental and for sale develops in multifamily overlay district 4 shall be affordable to households earning 80% of the area median household income. A minimum of 1 affordable unit will be required for developments more than 9 units in the multifamily overlay district 4. 3, notwithstanding the reference to special permit, all other requirements set forth in Section 9I, 3A, 4A, and 4B of Ipswich's Protective Zoning Bylaw shall apply to multifamily housing created under this Section 9V. For avoidance of doubt, this means that 15% of the for sale developments in multifamily overlay districts 1, 2, and 3 shall be affordable to households earning 80% of the area median household income, and a minimum of 1 affordable unit will be required for sale developments of 7 or more units. Thank you. So the Planning Board would like for you to hear from the task force. This article is a result of state legislation, and as such, the town manager established a task force of citizens from various disciplines, as well as members of some boards and committees, for the purpose of recommending a zoning district that works best for Ipswich. Please give your attention to 2 of our members of the task force, Chris Doctor and Sarah Player, as they lay out the recommendation for us.
Thank you, Tony. Chris Doctor, 49 North Main Street, architect member of the Ipswich 3A Task Force.
Sarah Player, 45 Mile Lane, Select Board, 3A Task Force.
Can we have the second slide? Next one. Next slide. Oh, sorry. Go back. Thank you. With any good planning exercise, it is important to frame the conversation. Our task force considered how the town has described who we are and what's important to us as a community. As a task force, we looked to the Ipswich Community Development Plan, or CDP, and after years of planning, the town meeting adopted the CDP in 2021. When the CDP envisions future development, it describes it as follows, quote, "New housing and business development continues to be concentrated in walkable areas, including town center and near the train station. Not only is new development sustainable, it pays special attention to the town's historic character, natural green spaces, walkability, and access to services," end quote. The task force used this vision as a guiding principle for how to approach development in Ipswich. The more we learned about 3A, the more we realized how well 3A supports this uniquely Ipswich planning approach. The purpose of 3A is to encourage multifamily development in the town center and near transit. For Ipswich, it's the commuter rail station. The proposed 3A overlay does not change the underlying zoning, which remains in effect. Instead, it provides an alternative development path that is consistent with and complements the desired development pattern for the town center.
When we started this discussion, we started with a blank slate of areas to consider, including some areas removed from the town center, but recognized from the outset that the purpose of 3A, the purpose of our current zoning regulations, and our own current existing development pattern of concentrated development within the town center strongly supported aligning the 3A overlay district with our existing zoning. After significant engagement with the town community, including multiple forums and surveys, it became clear that the majority of respondents agreed with this assessment. As you see on the slide, Ipswich's proposed 3A multifamily overlay district, or MOD, is made up of 4 sub-districts that overlay the existing underlying zoning. They're the 4 colored areas. These areas all allow and currently have multifamily housing. The sub-districts allow slightly different density to remain consistent with the underlying zoning districts: general business, central business, and in-town residential. 3 of the sub-districts, 1, 2, and 4, are in close proximity to the train station and contain most of the downtown, while Mod 3 overlays a portion of Colonial Drive, which is a high-density residential area composed entirely of multifamily housing and located about a half a mile from the train station. Mod 4 mirrors the heart of Ipswich's central business district, Market Street, and a portion of Central and Hammett Streets. They're composed primarily of mixed-use buildings. This sub-district mandates that new development under 3A be mixed use, which requires a commercial use on the ground floor and a residential component elsewhere in the building. This helps keep the downtown vibrant. Unlike many communities subject to 3A, Ipswich's current zoning largely meets the requirements of 3A relative to multifamily housing development. In fact, the number of multifamily housing units that 3A stipulates Ipswich allow for is currently fewer than what could potentially be built under current zoning. Let me say that again. The total number of multifamily units that could be built in our 3A districts is less than what could be built under current zoning bylaw. The density component of 3A in Ipswich is 15 units per acre. This sounds like a lot until you apply that measure to our buildings. Here are some Ipswich buildings that meet or even exceed the density requirement of 3A. These familiar buildings, next slide, these familiar buildings are part of the Ipswich landscape today. They're part of the fabric of the town. To preserve town character and keep 3A zoning as consistent with current zoning, its dimensional requirements for building height, number of stories, building setbacks, and lot coverage are identical to those in our current zoning. Next slide. The primary difference between our current zoning bylaw and the 3A multifamily overlay is the permitting process. Our bylaw requires a special permit for multifamily, and 3A does not allow their use. It does, however, allow communities to require site plan review for all proposed multifamily housing under 3A. This is fortunate because the Ipswich bylaw has a comprehensive site plan review process that has been successfully used by the Planning Board for decades to review non-residential buildings. The Ipswich 3A overlay zoning applies these site plan review standards to all proposed multifamily developments. Special permit and site plan review processes have many similarities. Both require public hearings in front of the Planning Board, which allow abutters and the general public to give input on the project. Both consider general standards such as traffic flow and safety, adequacy of utilities and infrastructure, impact on the natural environment, and impact on neighborhood character. For over 25 years, Ipswich, through its zoning bylaw, has required developers of multifamily housing to provide a percentage of the housing as affordable. We know Ipswich residents need diverse housing options as they move through life. Current Ipswich seniors need smaller, accessible, and economical units as they downsize. New graduates need workforce housing as they struggle to stay in town. Many Ipswich families cannot afford single-family homes here and need other options. This 3A overlay bylaw requires the provision of affordable housing in a manner similar to our current affordability requirements, while satisfying the parameters of the 3A statute. 3A enables Ipswich to become a more affordable community, whether through the creation of long-term, income-restricted affordable housing, or simply by providing less expensive alternatives to single-family housing.
Design. Design considerations consistent with the character of Ipswich are important. We've heard that loud and clear. In our case, there are development standards as well as design guidelines. We've incorporated standards into the bylaw which require developments to follow criteria relating to site design, parking, building arrangement, principal facade orientation and character, etc. These standards ensure developments are consistent with the appropriate character of Ipswich, in this case, in the town center. We're also developing additional design guidelines to establish a common language and understanding of design principles and standards for building in Ipswich. These guidelines will supplement our existing ones by providing more photos, pictures, and diagrams using original development historic to Ipswich as the source for the character. This will help ensure both existing and new development work together to create vibrant, dynamic, and appealing places to live and work.
We've heard a lot of concerns about how 3A could impact our utilities and schools. Relative to the impact of development on our water supply, our water director says the multifamily housing is less impactful than single-family homes that use more water to support larger lawns and gardens. Relative to Ipswich's electric grid, our ELD manager states that higher density development benefits the ELD by lowering infrastructure and distribution costs per unit compared to single-family homes. It also tends to be more energy efficient, as shared heating and cooling systems contribute to greater grid efficiency overall. Studies have shown that multifamily housing has less of an impact on school enrollment than single-family homes. Compliance is linked to funding eligibility for many state grants. In the past 6 years, Ipswich has received $2.7 million, which it would be ineligible to receive if we didn't adopt 3A. The state also reserves the right to add additional grants to this list. Non-compliant communities have been sued by the state and are incurring expensive legal fees. Milton has spent $275,000 for legal representation for 3A. Non-compliant towns have also lost grant funding. Milton has lost nearly $400,000 in grants thus far. Non-compliance is costly.
And I'd like to close by pointing out several things that 3A does and does not do. 3A does allow multifamily housing with site plan review. It does establish development standards for construction, and it requires housing affordability. 3A does not mandate construction of multifamily housing. It does not permit more housing units than allowed by our current existing zoning, and it does not allow developers to exceed the bylaw's dimensional requirements. Ipswich is unique, not like other communities. What we can say is that 3A is made for Ipswich. 3A largely mirrors existing zoning and land use. It supports compact housing near the train station, requires mixed-use development in downtown, promotes diverse, affordable housing options in the town center, and is consistent with Ipswich as codified in the CDP, our own Ipswich Community Development Plan. Thank you.
Sarah Player, Select Board. During the Select Board discussions around 3A, Charlie Shapitsky reminded us that throughout our history, Ipswich has welcomed a variety of different residents from various cultures that have become woven into the fabric of the town. The Polish picnic, the Greek festival, and other events are now cultural cornerstones of our broader community. Charlie talked about growing up with friends who were wealthy and lived in larger homes, as well as having friends who lived in smaller, more modest homes. He suggested that fear of change could have prevented Ipswich from becoming the community that it is now. He reminded us that we're all Ipswich. I believe one of the roles of the Select Board is to help guide Ipswich forward while maintaining the town's character, history, and traditions. Forward progress can seem scary at times, and as such, we should approach change in a deliberate and thoughtful way. The 3A process was inclusive and thorough. Through that process, we heard that our Ipswich residents, our senior citizens, our new graduates, and our young families are struggling with the cost and availability of housing. Ipswich residents are having a hard time remaining in the town that they love, that we all love. The 3A proposal closely aligns with our current zoning bylaw, with which we are familiar. 3A provides property owners an additional path to development to the underlying zoning. We drafted companion design guidelines to put some guardrails around the new buildings to ensure that they maintain the character of our neighborhoods. 3A helps our continuing efforts to enable our residents to afford living here. I hope Ipswich can once again see that reasonable, measured initiatives can benefit the community. The Select Board supports this Article 3-2. We encourage you to vote yes on Article 8.
Typically, minority members often don't speak to issues, but since the split is 3-2 on the Select Board, they've asked the indulgence of the community to hear the minority position from the Select Board. So, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and through you to the members of town meeting. It is good to see a quorum of this health still in the room. I want to first start off by thanking the 3A task force for all of their hard work and due diligence, because I do truly believe that they provided Ipswich with a best-case scenario opportunity if we were to decide to comply with 3A. But tonight's discussion is relative to whether we should be complying with 3A. And I'm here tonight to talk about the minority position about why the Select Board, at least 2 members on the Select Board, believe that Ipswich should not comply with 3A. Take away some of the stuff that frustrated us when we first heard about 3A, the fact that it was stuffed in the middle of a 2020 economic development bond bill passed by the legislature in the wee hours of the night, specifically had language about restricting taxpayer-funded grants to communities that wouldn't comply, and then went above and beyond and lowered the quantum of vote. Typically, zoning articles are 2/3 majority vote to pass. They lowered it to a simple majority because they knew that the folks at town meeting would have issue with this, because it is a level of the state crossing lanes from what they're responsible for into the lane of towns and what we're responsible for. But take all of that aside. and put all that aside for a second, I'd like to address three things. One is affordability, one is the difference between site plan review and special permit, and then obviously one is the SJC court case. So let's talk about affordability. Nowhere in the language of the law, the only 3 paragraphs, by the way, is what consists of 3A. Nowhere in that language is any verbiage when it comes to affordability. Not for seniors, not for low income, nothing on affordability. And I bring that up because I'm afraid that the narrative over the past couple of weeks has been altered to a perception that passing 3A is going to bring all this different opportunity of affordability to Ipswich. And I wish that were true. Coming from someone whose generation is having a hard time penetrating the housing market, I wish that was true. Now, granted, we can put our own local stipulations on housing affordability requirements, but I do question the interpretation of the original law that was written by a developer that comes in with deep pockets and a bench full of lawyers that has the ability to alter that interpretation. Let's talk about the difference between site plan review and special permit, because unfortunately, at our warrant hearings and at other meetings, it's been said that there's really not that much of a difference, that site plan review still has enough teeth in the game to ultimately curtail the project to how you would like it in town. And my argument to that is that if that was the case, then we wouldn't be discussing 3A right now. We wouldn't be discussing 3A because 3A is used to break down local barriers so developers can come in and develop, right? The site plan review has the ability to critique certain aspects of the development, but the development itself still has the ability to move forward, whereas special permit restricts that because you have to go through an additional hurdle. And that is why, even though they say that the 3A overlay district has less units available than what's currently existing in zoning, it's the special permit portion that has held off developers to a certain extent. I know my time is coming to an end, Mr. Moderator. Again, I think that we need to remind the state, although they already have provisions about the state dictating certain zoning things such as 40B, certain things relative to public safety zoning, we need to say, where is the line in the sand? When are we going to say, look, Ipswich has spent many town meetings and many years going through the detailed process of curtailing our zoning to how we as Ipswich want to see our town look. We're not going to have the state come in and impede on that at a stroke of a pen by an administration that had one foot out the door who was trying to address housing. And lastly, Mr. Moderator, whether or not you support 3A, whether you're here because you support it or you don't, no decision should be made until we know what the SJC's ruling is going to be relative to the AG's case on Milton. I urge you to vote no on 3A. Thank you.
Good evening. If Linda stole Joe's thunder, then I think Michael, I'm going to have to at least speak louder to compete with Michael. So the Finance Committee is responsible to ensure the long-term financial health of the town, and often that is displayed through a lot of question and answering to minimize risk. We have asked many of the same questions that you all have posed tonight to try to drive out risk for all of these articles. If you've watched the news, you will see that other communities have engaged in litigation after voting no. A no vote would guarantee legal expenses and lost incentives, to Sarah's point, to the tune of at least $600,000. A yes vote reduces the unit yield by 200 units. That's right. Yesterday, pre-3A, we could theoretically build more units than a post-3A world. Today's zoning allows that. The adoption of 3A would encourage multifamily development. It would match our community development plan that we drafted back in 2021. And I encourage everyone to put our votes behind our community development plan and the opportunity for affordable housing. I will finally add that the motion, can we put the motion up? Has it been displayed yet? it may be easier to read the motion from here than on this page. I just want to point out that the motion was recently changed to add a very clear item that says that a minimum of, it sets minimums for affordable housing. It wasn't there previously, and it's important that we added that to make sure that we are focused on making this affordable. So the Finance Committee ultimately sees more risk in a no vote because we're assuming legal expense and losing incentives. And, it's not something that we can sign off on taking a loss right out of the gate, especially when the zoning rules are not significantly changing as far as unit yield goes. Thank you.
Can we have this mic on, please?
Mr. Moderator, this motion, Dan Kelly, 6 North Main Street. This motion changes the language of the actual article. It provides, for instance, if I can read it correctly, that there'll be a 60% requirement, is that right? With respect to measuring the eligibility for affordability, the definition of affordability. Would you mind? I don't have my glasses, so I can't read it.
Are you questioning whether this amendment is within the four corners of the original plan? Is that your question?
My question is that the guidelines themselves, which have been promulgated by the state agency, said you cannot allow, the definition of affordable housing cannot be less than 80% of the...
I don't hear that as a procedural...
The question is, is this...
It's a question which would be quite in order during the debate.
Okay. So my procedural question, is this consistent with the article in that it makes changes, substantive changes to the article with respect to the definition of affordability, which is inconsistent with the guidelines?
I've ruled with the support of town council that this amendment is within the four corners of the article as published in the we're going to the minority opinion of the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Dana Milner, 6 Abbott Lane, with the minority opinion of the Finance Committee. So there was 3 primary reasons why there was voted down. The first is it's really an unfunded mandate from the state that provides no funding for how it might impact the town. For instance, what's the impact on town services? We've got emergency services, police and fire. We've got utilities, electric and water department, and we also have, most importantly, perhaps the schools. And one of the questions I asked in one of the hearings was about, we know that there's a maximum of 1,079 units, but have we done any studies to see what do we think the impact's going to be of passing this as far as how much more development will result from it? That question cannot be answered. I asked about whether there was a study done on the impact of town services, so that could be looked at, the costs of it. There was no answer for that. There was no study performed. So I think we're doing this on a lot of faith that it's going to bring in additional revenue that's going to pay for itself, but we really don't know that. The second point I wanted to bring up is affordable housing, and I know that there's some additional language that was recently added, but there's still an aspect of affordable housing where developers can buy out of the minimum requirements that are provided, and I think that's still a big question mark for me as far as whether we're going to see the kind of affordable housing percentages that are being put forth here or not. The last thing has to do with the whole thing about site review and whether site review gives the town any teeth to actually enforce things. And I think you have to take a look at its right to develop. And although there will be site review planning, performed, I'm not so sure that the town actually has anything that they can use to stop development once it moves forward. So I think for me, that's a big question mark. The bottom line is that there's some judicial proceedings that were discussed earlier that are still underway. It seems to me that it would be less risky for the town to hold off on approving this, let the Milton case go through, and then we can see whether it would be beneficial for the town to proceed. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. The school committee is also split up, so I'm going to ask for the majority and the minority opinion from the school committee. Yes.
Good evening, Sasha Sopik, 89 Pine Swamp Road from the school committee. The school committee voted 5-1 to support Article 8. In particular, we agree with the statements that were made earlier around the community need, specifically that it addresses the needs of our younger residents. We are concerned about the potential legal action and the cost implications to the town. In particular, the school committee discussed the impact to our schools and enrollment. We are not aware of any evidence or research that shows that multifamily housing or similar zoning changes significantly impacts school enrollment. Our schools do experience and are able to support fluctuation in enrollment today. Studies done by the state and independent agencies show that there is actually a steady decline in enrollment across the state of Massachusetts for over the last 15 years, and that there is no significant relationship between housing production rates and the school enrollment growth. The research suggests that concerns about new housing driving school enrollment are not founded. Thank you.
We'll hear now the minority opinion from the school committee. Ms. Connolly.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Jenny Connolly, 8 Linden Street. I'm a member of the school committee. As a school committee member, I encourage you to vote no on Article 8, 3A. My concern is the potential increase in student enrollment and the rate of speed of this potential increase due to 3A. Units built under 3A can have unlimited bedrooms and unlimited occupancy. Of course, this will bring many new families to our town. As you know, we are planning to build a new elementary school, large or small. The size of a school is determined by enrollment projections. Problem is, there are no projections for 3A. No one knows how the population impact of 3A. 3A is a population wild card. Back to my concern. I am extremely concerned that we will have a new, beautiful school that is grossly underbuilt, overcrowded, and unable to support all of our students' needs again. We need to increase the population of Ipswich responsibly, meaning we need to do this at a pace that we can support. Under 3A, Ipswich has no control over the speed of the population growth. Ipswich must stay in control of Ipswich. Please join me in voting no on this article. Thank you.
Before we go to floor debate, I'm going to hear from one other committee who has played a fairly central role in this, and that's the Ipswich Partnership.
Hi.
I'm sorry. I thought we had heard through the chair, the planning board.
Okay.
So let me hear from the Ipswich Partnership.
Charlie Allen, 4 Nuthatch Road. I'm also the chair of the Ipswich Housing Partnership. The partnership and the Ipswich Housing Trust voted unanimously in support of this article. Mr. Moderator, not everybody is familiar with our committees. If I could briefly describe them and why we take a position on this.
Do whatever you want with your 3 minutes.
Thanks. The partnership and trust are volunteer committees that have been around for about 20 years. We meet once a month. Our sole purpose is to help people live affordably in Ipswich. We use our limited financial resources towards that end. We also comment on policy matters that relate to housing. By my count, over the last 10 years, we've provided direct financial assistance to 58 households in Ipswich. Many of those are rehab loans to lower income, often elderly homeowners to help them stay in their homes. We provided first-time homebuyer loans. We provided assistance to a lot of families in need during the pandemic, simply paying their rent. Of those 58 actions, only 3 have resulted in new and permanent affordable housing units. Creating housing is really hard to do. It's not for lack of trying. I'm glad we did accomplish something, but it's a drop in the bucket, frankly, relative to the problem. We're going backwards on this. I won't try to take the time to define the problem or to tell you why I think it's so important for people to have decent and secure housing. I expect we're going to hear from others in the discussion on that tonight. 3A is not principally an affordable housing program. It's a housing supply program. Given the principle of supply and demand, supply should help, and it definitely will. What's also true, though, is that the 3A task force has succeeded in presenting us with a plan that meaningfully adds to the affordability demands relative to what the law itself would provide. And I don't think that means that 3A is going to solve our housing problem by any stretch, but it's another tool that will help. I don't think we're going to see a flood of development activity or new units produced, but I do think over time we'll see some new units produced, and those units will be in the downtown core that's already built up, has the infrastructure, and has obvious advantages in terms of access to services and transportation. I get it that this started at the state level and people can be offended by that, but what we're looking at, what's in front of us today to vote on, fits comfortably with Ipswich. It supports goals that the town has already adopted, independent of the state. We support this proposal and urge you to vote yes.
I appreciate the help in keeping people on time, but I'm trying to do a pretty good job myself. So if you can trust me, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. I had understood that the report given by Chris Doctor and Ms. Blair was essentially the planning board. If the planning board has something to say of their own, take your 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jennifer Crawford from 2 Bunker Hill Road in Ipswich, obviously. The Planning Board has reviewed the 3A zoning provision presented in Article 8 and as described by the 3A task force in various meetings and through their documents. We find that this Article 1 is consistent with existing zoning relative to allow density and dimensional regulations. That is, under this article, new development will be at a size and scale comparable to the existing neighborhoods within the neighborhoods where multifamily development is currently allowed. 2, it reinforces the goals and strategies of our community development plan. 3, it requires a site plan review process that will include more robust development standards and new design reviewed guidelines that will be developed with community input to preserve neighborhood character. Those for and against 3A, if it passes, should be involved in the process of helping us develop the new design guidelines. And 4, it complies with the objectives and the requirements of the 3A statute. As such, we, the Planning Board, by unanimous vote of 5-0, endorse and strongly encourage its adoption by this special town meeting. Thank you.
Having heard from all of the boards and committees, I'm now going to ask the gentleman at the question mic What is his question with respect to?
First, is the mic on?
With respect to process and procedures.
Yes, procedural. Robert Hagerty, 82 High Street. I just realized we're on the amendment. We're not on the main motion yet, but when we get to the main motion, would it be in order to make a motion to table it to annual town meeting?
I'm going to answer, first of all, no.
Okay.
Why? One town meeting cannot populate a future warrant. The only way a warrant can be populated is by action of the select board or citizens petition. One town meeting cannot tell another town meeting what they can and cannot do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Warner, and then we'll go here. Again, process or procedure.
Is it time to ask a question, or do I have to wait?
It's for process and procedure. If it's a question about the motion, it should be done from one, either the pro or con. Mike, take your pick.
No.
I understand what you're saying. Always need a little advice, always willing to take advice. So please.
Is it, okay, you're directing me to speak?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right there.
Helen Weatherall, 44 Fellows Road. We have heard by a number of entities, the planning office, the Section 3A committee, the planning board, the interim town planner who served in the office before our currently serving town planner, that Section 3A has really minimal impact, that it is consistent with our community development plan, et cetera, et cetera. To which I want to say to you all, if it's doing little to impact us, then why on earth do we need it? In fact, I would state we do not need it, because what it will do, it will remove from our toolbox, if you want to use that term, the special permit, which is the teeth we have to dictate what does get built and how it gets built. So I also want to, there was a comment made in the presentation by the planning board, the conditions. They're interesting, they're brought to us all sort of by surprise, the 60% requirement, et cetera. And a thought crossed my mind, which is, we're taking a vote tonight. Let's say compliance goes forward in Ipswich. That's not the end of it. The state then has to accept our proposal. So at that point in time, we might find that the limitations or criteria put on it by our planning board that look intelligent to us might be refused. We don't know. It's another question that we don't have an answer to. And it's also another cause for pause. Right, I want to go back to the point. I want to remind people, we just in recent years actually paid a consultant company and had many people like myself serve on committees to develop a housing production plan and to review the comprehensive plan. Now we're being told to put those aside and let the state come in and tell us what's going to happen on this acreage that we had once and we currently have control of, while we're being told it will impact us minimally. I do want to put one image in your minds, which is, or even to ask a question, which is, going forward, potentially, could single-family homes in the area be bought up by an outside interest and have them torn down and they're replaced by a large multifamily townhouse complex?
That could happen now.
It's a question, and it's something, it's a question and an image I want us all to contemplate. So let's see. I'll leave it at that and let other people speak.
Thank you. Sir. Please.
I'm going to answer one of the questions. Can I answer one of the questions as a member of the 3A task force?
No, I recognize that. Please get in line.
Hi, I'm Bruce McDonald, 53 Clark Road. I just want to share my own Ipswich experience and why I'm in favor of the 3A measure. I'm a relative newcomer, having first moved to Ipswich in 1999 to live with my in-laws in my wife's family home on Clark Road. The several years living together under my in-laws' grace has made it possible for my wife and I to start our family and buy our own home in Rowley. Fast forward to 2011, and the tables were turned. My father-in-law passed away, and our extended family was faced with the question of how to care for my mother-in-law, Rose, whose greatest wish was to remain in her home, which was impossible on her own for financial and health reasons. We moved back to Ipswich as a family of 5, cared for Rose, and our children went through the Ipswich schools, growing up in a supportive community with this just incredible natural beauty. Our experience was only possible because we were in a multi-generational household helping Rose in her familiar, comfortable setting. My son is now preparing to graduate from college. Rose passed away a year ago. I'm fairly sure the generational cycle will turn again as my son very much wants to raise his own family in Ipswich. But should it have to be that way? I don't claim to know all the nuance of 3A, but I feel that another tool to make our community more accessible and affordable for young families or for our public servants or for our elderly is a wonderful thing. If it helps to bring vital new energy downtown and helps our seniors to stay longer in the place they love, then we enrich our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go to the next speaker, there was a question asked by the prior speaker, which I think deserves an answer, and I'm going to ask Glenn Gibbs to answer that question with simply answering the question with no advocacy. No advocacy. It's just to answer the factual question. Glenn comes to us because he's been active in the planning department. He's quite familiar with 3A. So if he can repeat the question as he understood it, answer it factually.
Right. The question was about, or the comment was that we were taking action, 3A was taking action relative to housing affordability without having any idea whether or not those actions were acceptable to the state. The response to that is that there indeed has been conversation with the state. They've been aware of where the town is at this. The consultant has been talking to them, and there's high confidence on the part of the town that that is something that will be found acceptable by the state officially should that pass tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Jesse Conpop, 21 Arrowhead Trail. I'm here because I love Ipswich. I went to the public schools here. I want to raise kids in the same Ipswich I grew up in, and that is the small town of Ipswich, not the suburb of Ipswich. When I come home from college every year, there's a whole section of forest torn down already with new developments. We're talking about adding 1,000 new units. I fail to see how that will not impact the Ipswich River, which is already endangered, how it will not impact the Ipswich Public Schools, where I had the privilege of small class sizes that allowed me the learning and the attention I needed. Please.
Thank you. Ma'am?
Nancy Warner, 16 Green Street. I can only address, believe it or not, a senior citizen's perspective on this. I know that's shocking. But we downsized from our house and we're fortunate enough to be able to find a place to live pretty much in the center of town. I can walk to the library. I can walk to Sandpiper Bakery. That's important. I can get to the train, the bank. That accessibility is critical, absolutely critical. I am affiliated with the Senior Center, and I'm on the Council on Aging Board, and though I don't speak for them, I speak for many of the people that I speak to every day who are looking for an apartment someplace in town where they can still be in the center of Ipswich, in accessible areas with age-friendly apartments or residences, and to be able to reach the senior center easily. So I support this measure because I think it allows that downtown to become what we so desperately need as older Americans here in Ipswich. Please support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Engel, Dan Kelly, 6 North Main Street. I'm here with Chris Florio. Your address?
44 Fellows Road, Ipswich.
We jointly move that this matter be indefinitely postponed.
Is there a second?
If we could have the slides, please.
So here's an example of where I've appreciated the cooperation of the person making the motion. They identified to me, and I kept in confidence what their intent was, and I worked with them to develop a presentation that was ruled in order and consistent with the warned articles. So if we can go to the end of the presentation, past the town seal.
Mr. Moderator, may I ask a procedural question?
You may.
What does town council think the effect of an indefinite tabling will mean?
Indefinite postponement is effectively the same as a no vote.
Thank you.
So this is your motion, Mr. Kelly, Mr. Florio? Okay.
Yes, it is.
So please.
May I be heard?
And I'll point out to the group that I'm giving them some latitude in terms of their time, but they've agreed to respect that latitude.
So I stand before you as a proud conservative with a proud progressive, and the two of us are jointly moving in a bipartisan effort to suspend consideration of this indefinitely, which means that the Select Board could put it on the warrant again if it chose to do it at the May meeting or at a special meeting convened. So if we go to the next slide. The reason we're doing this is that the Attorney General sued the town of Milton. Okay? Many towns, and we'll have a slide which shows this, have voted no. In fact, North Reading 2 weeks ago voted no. And many towns have chose to postpone their town meeting in consideration of 3A beyond the deadlines established by the 3A guidelines. We'll have a slide which shows those towns. And the reasons many of these towns have done it is because we have a test case. The Attorney General did not sue all of these towns that said no. They haven't incurred any legal expenses. The only town that's incurring legal expenses is the town of Milton, which is the test case going forward. And if you go back for a minute. Back, please. The gist of Milton's argument is that, okay, as Mr. Doherty said, in the middle of the night, an omnibus bill of many, many pages was passed with 3 paragraphs, including 3A. And then, once the Healy administration came in, they set forth 30 pages of guidelines to enforce or to lay out the obligations of 3A, all of which was outside or beyond the statutory language, including the deadlines, for instance. And the town of Milton, among other things, has argued before the SJC, and I heard those arguments, and I heard the judge's questions. Wait a minute. These 30 pages of guidelines that have been amended 5 times did not go through the normal regulatory processes required by law. The law requires hearings and open debate and comment, not only for the original guidelines, but all of the 4 or 5 amendments, and there may be more amendments to come. That didn't happen. The law requires an analysis, when you promulgate regulations as to the impact on small businesses. And most importantly, the law requires, this is the regulatory law, that the agency do a cost. They, the justices that I heard in that oral argument that occurred just a few weeks ago didn't like that. They were very, very concerned that a state agency had taken 3 little paragraphs and turned them into 30 pages without going through the normal regulatory process. Justices are going to decide that question sometime in the next 90 to 120 days. And they could very well throw out those guidelines and say, start again. So why should we radically change our bylaws to allow 1,000 units as a matter of right to go in when this case is still pending? There is a test case waiting for all the communities to. Here's the now know a couple of sorry. Here's the ones that the spring. This is beyond Chris.
Ben, really helpful in because of I really appreciate. And I want to assure you delay this article because we truly believe it's the right thing for Ipswich to do. As a bonus, if you agree with us, you get to go home a little early. As Dan just pointed out, the 3A case was recently heard by the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts and will be ruled on in the coming weeks. A number of the justices in that case were very clearly taking Milton's arguments very seriously. Justice Sergei Georges wrote, "I believe this case raises novel questions of law which are of public importance and which are time-sensitive and likely to recur." In addition to the have filed 3A. So that's all. Attorney. Just like they postponed this to the next town meeting because the rulings would have been taking place. But as you heard earlier, that's not legally possible to schedule an event at a town meeting at a previous town meeting. So we're saying we would like to postpone this indefinitely, trusting that the proponents of 3A will bring it back after the ruling, and that by then the ruling hopefully will be something that makes 3A a better thing for our town. The rulings in Milton and other cases could change the law in a way that could be really beneficial to Ipswich. If we wrote tonight, we'd be risking binding ourselves to a very potentially flawed bylaw, and it would be the law in Ipswich. There's a tremendous amount of misinformation that's been circulating about the 3A guidelines. I've spoken to a number of well-informed citizens who I respect, who are very well-intentioned. The original intention of 3A is great. We do need more housing. Housing around the MBTA makes sense. Affordable housing is desperately needed in Ipswich. That all could have been accounted for in those original 3 paragraphs of the actual law. But the 30 extra pages added all kinds of stuff. Michael Dougherty presented some of the things I would love to say, and my job up here is not to tell you what's wrong with the law. We'll do that if we ever get to the vote. But the one thing that I do want to say is, with the limited time I have to address all these understandings, the one I want to talk about is affordability. If you could go to the slide after this. This is the actual law. This is the entire 3A law. It's 3 paragraphs long. That's everything in the law. That's all that's legal. pages of guidelines that are not the law, but what the Ipswich committee based, what the law that you're voting on tonight, if you get to it, is this law. I'm almost done. Next slide. The thing I want to say about this law is that it is not about affordable housing. This is the guidelines, and it specifically says right at the top, Section 3A does not include any express requirements or authorizations for an MBT community to require affordable units in a multifamily housing project. So anybody who believes 3A is about affordability is wrong. Our town committee has done a tremendous job of squeezing the last drop possible out of affordability, but it's still less than we already had. If we vote for the 3A, we're going to have less affordable housing, not more. Please vote to delay this, because then the people that are in favor can refine it, make it better, and bring it back to us. And the people who are opposed to it have time to get the truth about this out so that we can have an honest debate about this in the future with hopefully a better town. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator? Yep. Sorry, Dee Sciano, 4 hours.
Proposers of this guideline.
The Sciano, 4.
Motion to indefinitely postpone.
Correct. I'm speaking to the data that was provided. It is inaccurate and not factual. Actually, this past Saturday, I spoke to the planning board chair of Georgetown, and they have not delayed it. They are still discussing it, and the plan is to complete it before December 31st. So I can tell you the facts, which are, if I can read it, per the state website, accurate facts clearly show 60 communities are on their way to approval. 15 rejected, but still have time to comply, and 2 are non-compliant. So I really would appreciate it when facts are put up that they're accurate. It's very misleading what's happening.
I'd like to avoid is a discussion where people start questioning each other's facts. Being the environment that we're in, if someone wants to make a statement, and as long as we're asking them to be truthful, we will accept that. Mr. Warner. I'm sorry, Ms. Connolly.
Are we discussing the motion that Dan Kelly put forth?
I'm sorry, speak to the mic.
Sorry, Jenny Connolly, 8 Linden Street. If we're speaking to the motion that Dan Kelly put forth, I'm on the wrong mic. So I'm just going to wait to see what happens, and then I'll be back.
Yeah, this does get a little confusing, the pro and con mics. If you're in support of the motion, I guess you're at this side. If you're against the motion, you're at this side. Yeah, I know, but.
Okay, all right.
I mean, this is one of those situations where up is down and black is white, and that sort of thing. So.
Okay, so I will go. I'm on the correct mic, I believe. All right, Jenny Connolly, 8 Linden Street. No one knows Ipswich like the people of Ipswich. No one loves Ipswich like the people of Ipswich. So why would we give the state control of the heart of our town, our downtown? The state doesn't know us. The state doesn't know our quaint town.
Ms. Connolly, you should be speaking to the motion.
No, that's
the indefinite. Why should
I'm sorry,
we?
That's what I was confused about.
Why should we or should we not indefinitely postpone? Not to the main motion.
Okay.
So your comments should be.
So I'll wait.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll be patient.
That's why I was asking.
So I'm back on this side, I think. Mr. Warner.
Thank you. My name's Dave Warner, 18 Dornell Road, Ipswich. I'm speaking to indefinitely postpone. I'm reading from the state's guidelines, which were all those 30 pages that were added. The first thing on the website is this has been adjusted, put in law January 2020, modified August 10th, 2022, modified August 21st, 2022, modified August 17th, 2022. So I'm assuming that all these guidelines here from the town or whatever are based on August 17th, 2022. I don't know what's going to happen in January 2025. What will the state do? Nothing says that they can't modify these, all right? If you give them control of your town and all of a sudden they decide to change this, you'll have no recourse. One of the things in the law that they tell you you have plenty of rules and regulations to do, one little thing here, right off the website, just got it right here. Site plan approval may regulate matters such as vehicle access and circulation on a site, architectural design of a building, and screening of adjacent properties.
Mr. Warner, I'm going to bring you back to, you need to tell the
This is one of the reasons why, is that I don't think that this is based on what's here. This could change tomorrow, and it may change when Milton's lawsuit is finally adjudicated. So you're going to vote for something that is on shifting ground. The guidelines are changing all the time. You will lock yourself in. You may have a chance to get a better deal. You guys might get a chance to get a better deal.
Thank you.
I think we should postpone this.
Thank you. Mr. Schaaf.
Thank you. Please reset the timer. I plan
We
to
always,
use all 3 minutes.
Mr. Schaaf, we always do.
Michael Schaaf, Shagbark Woods. I rise this evening to speak against the proposal to indefinitely postpone this article. Oddly enough, that indefinite postponement was proposed by an attorney. This is an illegal action that's proposed, as we are required to respond to 3A by December 31. But that's not the most important reason that I oppose this. The primary reason is that the information that was given to us is specious and unreliable. A lot of communities, 15 communities I believe was noted, have failed to support 3A, but they have done this for innumerable different reasons. Milton, for example, says they are not a rapid transit community. They say they are more of a community like ourselves, a commuter rail community. I'm not familiar with all the details of other ones here, but merely listening to them does not necessarily align with where Ipswich is. The indefinite postponement would prevent us from adopting a zoning arrangement that would actually reduce the total amount of units that we can build here. So if it doesn't make any sense to me, it may not be the case in Reading, North Reading, or wherever else it is, but for us, it is an action that reduces the total maximum units.
Mr. Schaaf, you're speaking to the merits of the main motion, not to the motion to indefinitely postpone.
The postponement obstructs our ability to reduce the total amount of units that are allowable, and I urge you to oppose the indefinite postponement.
Thank you.
Wendell Waters, 7 Mineral Street. I'm speaking in favor of the motion that was just made. I have a bunch of concerns, not the least of which is how many people will be displaced who currently have a situation that maybe works for them. And I also think that basing your affordability on the median income.
Ma'am, you need to speak to the issue at hand, which is why should the Assembly vote against or for indefinite postponement? We're not talking about the merits of the main motion.
Okay, all right. I'm sort of confused then about, because when the people who made the motion spoke, they talked about a lot of the things that I was going to address.
If you can address what their comments were, then you would be in order.
Okay, affordability, I believe one of the things they said was that This is not necessarily going to increase the amount of affordable housing. I agree with that. Because our definition of affordable is wrong right out of the gate. And is that in line?
I didn't think, I thought that, I mean, here's my interpretation
Okay.
of what is appropriate to be discussing.
Okay.
The proponents of the motion to indefinitely postpone have suggested that it would be advisable for the community to postpone action on this matter because of the uncertainty of the law itself. That there's sufficient examination by the courts that may ultimately significantly modify or perhaps even eliminate major portions of the 3A requirement. Speak to that.
I guess all I'm going to say is that I agree with them. I agree with the motion that was made, and I urge everybody to vote in favor of it.
Okay, thank you. We'll take.
Jim?
Well, we'll take one more comment, and then I'm going to ask for the sense of the meeting as to whether they wish to go to a vote or not.
Jim? Speak.
Again, let's not get confused about who the moderator is. I'm going to recognize Mr. Burke, and then I'm going to recognize planning board member, I believe, right? Or no?
Task force.
Yeah, task. Okay.
We heard from them already.
And no, you have not heard from them on the motion to indefinitely postpone. Ms. Claude, before we go to the speakers, did you have a question, a procedural question?
Can we move the question, please?
You cannot move. No, I said at the very beginning of the meeting, I said at the very beginning of the meeting that if you have a notion to move the question, you do it from one of these mics. This is procedural. Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Jim. I urge you to reject this motion to indefinitely postpone Article 8. I also urge you reject the tones of negativity, confusion, and misinformation that is permeating this community and seeping in from other communities. Ipswich needs to do what's best for Ipswich. I will skip my prepared notes that extol the benefits of Article 8, and I'll jump right ahead here. I believe, and I think many of you do, that Ipswich is an open, diverse, caring, and welcoming community. So let's demonstrate to the other 76 plus...
Mr. Burke, I'll give you the same advice I've given
getting to that, Jim.
numerous times.
The other 76 plus growing, compliant communities that Ipswich is prepared to do its part in solving the housing crisis. Please join me. Please join me in rejecting this motion to postpone. We have a right and a responsibility to do it this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
Thank you. I was more courteous to you than they were to me.
Hi there, Peter Elliott, 273 Argilla Road, and member of the 3A Task Force. I am going to do what I just agreed to with Kelly Jane Klub in a second, but before I do that, we should not postpone this vote. We should vote on it, because if we don't vote on it now, we would actually have to call, correct me if I'm wrong, a town meeting to be held by itself before the end of the year in order to vote on this by the time it's compliant or not. Otherwise, we will not be in compliance. So that will cost us money. And most of the things that people are voting against, we should actually just vote on this. Why do you want to just delay it and then vote on the same thing? Because this is answering directly to the reason of the question, is I'm gonna do it. Give me my time, just like all of you had it to. Excuse me. There's been so much talk around this. We should just vote on it. We as a townspeople have created this document together. Believe it or not, we have listened to people that have disagreed with the 3A Task Force and agreed with us to put this together. This has been a zoning article that has been put together that actually does fall within our town's needs, and it actually would build less, potential for building less housing than is under the current amount. So the reason that that's okay to talk about within this scope is that it's going to the point that we need to vote on this article. We should not be postponing this. There is no reason to postpone it. They're not going to make any of the other decisions from the lawyers of any of the other cases before we would have to vote again, and it would just cost us more and more money as we go down the line. I have lots more to say, but we should move the question.
I'm not going to let us speak, but that's all right.
So we have a motion to move the question. Do we have a second? Okay, the question has been moved and it's seconded. No, no. The question, moving the question means we go to the vote on the motion that's on the floor. And the motion that's on the floor is the motion to indefinitely postpone. So, sure. I will. Calling the question is a request that town meeting vote on the motion that is currently under discussion. So what is currently under discussion is the motion to indefinitely postpone. So moving the question is not debatable, but it does go to a vote of the town meeting. Essentially what moving the question asks the town meeting is, are you done discussing the question of indefinite postponement? If you think we need to discuss it more, then vote against moving the question. If you think we've discussed it enough, then vote for it. Procedural question.
Yes, I'm Ralph Williams, 9 Nags Head Road. I specifically read Robert's Rules of Order on the procedure of moving the question. The next thing we have to do is to vote whether we want to move the question or not.
Thank you for that. Let's be clear that we run our meetings by a document called Town Meeting Time, not Robert's Rules of Orders. Fortunately, in this instance, they're in agreement. But they're not always in agreement. So we have a request to move the question. So we're going to go to a vote. If you're satisfied with the amount of debate on the indefinite postponement, then moving the question, you should vote yes. If you want more debate on moving the question, you vote no. So let's vote. Yes, the one green button says we're done discussing this issue, and then we go to a vote on it. And 2 says we want more debate. So record your vote. Close the vote. Okay, now what do? Now we go immediately to the motion to indefinitely postpone. So if you're in favor of indefinitely postponing, you're going to vote yes. If you're not in favor of indefinitely postponing, you're going to vote no. Now, if indefinite postponement fails, we go to the main motion, which is to adopt 3A. So, are we clear? Okay, so you can start your vote. Close the vote.
The birthplace of America.
So the motion to indefinitely postpone passes by a single vote. Thank you for staying around. I would entertain a motion to dissolve the meeting. Second, all those in favor? All those opposed? The meeting is dissolved.